Something in the chat. Okay. Good morning, everyone. The Prince George's County Planning Board is in session for Thursday, February 24th, 2022, our 80th virtual meeting since the onset of the pandemic in March of 2020. As we continue business operations and planning functions propelling Prince George's County forward in this environment, I'm going to remind everyone of the guidelines and pre-registration guidelines for participation. So all participants must pre-register, and all materials or exhibits, if any, must be submitted by 12 noon on the Tuesday before the planning board meeting, as shown on the screen, as announced in every weekly meeting, as posted on our website, and as clearly stated in bold red on our published weekly agenda. Registered speakers and presenters may join the meeting with the link provided via the email from the planning board office, or may listen or participate by phone utilizing the call-in number provided in the email. And of course, the public may continue to watch planning board meetings streamed live, or if you wish to become a person of record, you may sign up on our online web form. Please note the screen and the cursor for instructions. Before we proceed, I want to make sure that everyone knows who's here today. So I see we have the planning board. We have Commissioner Washington signed up. We have Commissioner Dorner signed up, present, and we have Commissioner Giraldo. I know then we have Madam Vice Chair Dorothy Bailey. And we have our planning director, Andre Checkley. We have our acting Deputy Planning Director, Derek Balaj here. We have our technical hearing writer, Marie Proctor. We have that wizard behind the curtain who makes sure that all of our technology is working well, Ryan Cron. We have working the PowerPoint Senior Planning Technician, Kenny Flanagan. We also have with us our Chief of Development and Review, James Hunt. And we have our Senior Legal Counsel, Peter Goldsmith, present. And I think that accounts for the persons here working. So before proceeding any further, we're okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, before proceeding any further, we'd like to take a moment of silence for those individuals and loved ones throughout our community and nation who passed away since our last meeting on February 17th. And within Prince George's County, we want to remember Karen Simpkins, the 18-year-old, just an 18-year-old who was shot in Landover, Maryland, near a school playground. Tragic. Within our region, Charlie Taylor, age 80, the Hall of Fame NFL wide receiver and running back who played with the Washington football team. He was, in 1964, he was the Washington team's first round draft choice. And in 1977, he finished his career as NFL's all-time leading pass catcher at that time. We want to remember the latest victims of the widespread coronavirus. More than 80 million reported cases and more than 966,000 deaths in the United States alone. Those are just the ones that are reported. In Maryland, we have over 999,000 reported cases. That's 999,000 reported cases and over 14,000 reported deaths in Maryland. It's still a problem. We still have to be careful. We want to remember those people. They are loved ones. They are colleagues, friends, family members. So they're not just statistics. They're human beings. Throughout the nation and the world, so obviously there was an invasion of the Ukraine, and it's hard to tell how many casualties there have been just yet. Some said over 100. All we know is that over 40 soldiers and over 10 civilians at this time. But there may be countless more, because we are also told that there are mobile morgues traveling around picking up the bodies of the deceased so that there will not be an accurate count. This is really tragic, and we want to keep them in our prayers, and clearly there's more to come. We want to remember Frank Pesci, the actor known for his roles in the film Beverly Hills Cop, Midnight Run, and Top Gun. Lindsay Perlman, age 43, an actress who appeared in General Hospital, Empire, and Chicago Justice. Walter Dellinger, the constitutional scholar who argued numerous cases before the United States Supreme Court. He was the former head of the Office of Legal Counsel in the U.S. Department of Justice and acting Solicitor General. David Tyson, the singer with the soul group, The Manhattans. Dr. Paul Farmer, the global health humanitarian and co-founder of Partners in Health, whose mission it is to provide health care for people around the world living in poverty. Can we mute everybody, please? And Jane Nightbird Marchetsky, only age 31, singer, songwriter, and contestant from talent show America's Got Talent, who had to drop out because of her illness. She died after battling cancer for 4 years. We are sure that there are many others, so we extend our deepest sympathy to any of you who may have suffered the loss of a loved one or a colleague, and we lift you in our thoughts and open our hearts to you. If we may have that moment of silence, please. Thank you. We are closing out, it is the month of February, we are closing out Black History Month. There have been tons and tons of wonderful programs sponsored by our planning department right here, and also the amazing Black History Month programs sponsored by the recreation division within our Parks and Recreation. The recreation, they have done such a fabulous job with this, so we want to, that's one of the many cultural programs run by the Department of Parks and Recreation. It is also American Heart Month. 17 million die each year from stroke or heart disease. That's a problem. Take care of your heart. It is Natural Therapeutic Recreation Month. Prince George's County Department of Parks and Recreation is a national award winner. Yes, we talk about our 6 gold medals, but we are a national award winner with therapeutic recreation. It's one of the many programs that come under recreation in Prince George's County, but it's for persons of all abilities. And we have won tremendous national recognition and awards for that. So it is National Recreation Month, and we want to remember that and acknowledge that, and thank our Therapeutic Recreation Division too. It is National Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. I have given you all the statistics on that. It is rampant. It continues to escalate. So we have to do our part to stop that. I won't go through the statistics again, but I will tell you there is a disconnect between the number of teens who say they have been accosted in some way, been the victim of physical violence at the hands of an intimate partner, and yet most parents, 80% of parents think, oh no, not my kid. My kid's never been subjected to that. Yes, they have. Many of them. So it is February 24th, and on this day, February 24th in 1864, author and former nurse Rebecca Lee Crumpler became the first African-American woman medical doctor in the United States. So that's a Black History Month tidbit for you. Her name was Rebecca Lee Crumpler, the first African-American woman to become a medical doctor in the United States. 1868, the United States House of Representatives voted to impeach President Andrew Johnson. Later acquitted in the Senate, though. 1924, Hindu lawyer, pacifist, spiritual leader, and proponent of independence for India, and a proponent of nonviolence resistance to British rule, Mahatma Gandhi was released from jail. 1965, I'm looking at some of the people who are participating today, but 1965, the Beach Boys released Help Me Rhonda. 1968, Fleetwood Mac released their self-titled debut album. 1973, okay, this is for you, Miss Bailey. Roberta Flack, her Killing Me Softly with his song went #1 on the charts. 1981, school headmistress Jean Harris was convicted of murdering her longtime lover, the Scarsdale Diet cardiologist Herman Tarnower. I had some familiarity with that Scarsdale Diet. It was not very successful for me. 1982, at the 24th annual Grammys, Quincy Jones took home producer, songwriter, composer, arranger, took home 5 Grammys. 1993, Eric Clapton won 6 Grammys, 3 for Tears in Heaven, about the accidental death of his 4-year-old son, Connor. 1998, Grammy Award-winning singer, pianist, composer Elton John became Sir Elton John when knighted by Queen Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace. 1999, at the 41st Grammy Awards, immensely talented singer, songwriter, rapper, actress Lauryn Hill won 5 Grammys. That's 5 of her total 8 Grammys for her debut solo album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. And it also became Album of the Year. And in 2008, Cuban revolutionary and President Fidel Castro retired as president of Cuba for after almost 50 years. And February 24th is National Chili Day, like the chili that you eat. And interestingly, yesterday was very, very warm. Today is very chilly, and it might be appropriate for National Chili Day. So, first slide, please. The Department of Parks and Recreation Spring 2022 issue of your guide is available, and printed copies are located at all commission facilities in Prince George's County and also online. This is what it looks like. It has pages and page and page and page and page of recreational opportunities for everyone in Prince George's County and our visitors. And there is something from everyone, from water babies, for toddlers, for all sorts of sports, lacrosse, kayaking, Tai Chi, karate, gymnastics, tennis, golf, the whole kit, basketball, the whole kit and caboodle, plus all sorts of lessons, including lifeguard lessons. It's just fabulous. But stuff for seniors too, and estate planning and computer lessons and chair yoga and Tai Chi for seniors. So many things, fitness, all of that is in their Guide to Parks and Recreation, the fabulous array of recreation programs in Prince George's County. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that something for everyone, toddlers, youth, adults, seniors, and individuals of all abilities, particularly our therapeutic recreation programs. So visit pgparks.com to view the digital brochure. We want to take a moment to say a couple of happy birthdays. So we're going to start. I announced this one last week, but we're going to start with can you turn me off? To say happy birthday to our Deputy Planning Director, Suzanne King. Her birthday was yesterday, so we want to give a shout out to her, and we know she's watching, and we wanted to catch her off guard. So happy birthday, Suzanne, our Deputy Planning Director. So we announced one last week, but I didn't know it was the big one, and now he's with us today. So we want to give a next one shout out to our own Senior Counsel, Peter Goldberg, and it is the big 4-0. So Commissioner Dorner, he is joining you. Mr. Flanagan over here, he is joining you. I'm sorry we didn't have a better picture, Peter, because you look kind of stern there. Maybe that's how you're supposed to look when you turn 40. But it's a wonderful thing. I think I can remember way back then. So congratulations, Peter. Happy birthday to you. And
thank you. I was jealous of Commissioner Dorner getting to join the club, so I thought I should join too.
Yeah, there you go. So congratulations. And finally, we want to give a birthday shout out to our very own Commissioner Shawnice Washington, who is our leap year baby. So we want to say happy birthday, Commissioner Washington, and give her a shout out as well. So, she's really, really very, very young because her birthday only rolls around every 4 years. So, but anyway, happy birthday to Commissioner Washington. So these continue to be very tough times as we continue to grapple with the anxiety, stress, fear, loss of friends and loved ones, and we're just plain tired of the disruption to our lives. But we struggle, we show up, we stand up, we push forward because we are resilient and we take care of business. We consult with the Prince George's County Department of Health on a near daily basis, and thankfully there is good news to report. The percent of positive test results, the infection rate, and the average daily case rate are all improving. And we want to thank each and every one of you for doing your part to make this happen. I am so proud of the commission. The commission is 98% vaccinated. And according to the CDC, the metrics, according to CDC metrics, we are now at the medium risk level for the average daily case rate and hospital capacity. We have gone from critical to high to medium. There's still room for improvement, make no mistake about it. So in the county, in the country, there are over 2,700 counties still at that high level, and another 338 counties at substantial. So we are one of only 86 counties in the United States to be at the moderate level. So we want to get to the low level, and then we want to get to the no level. So again, Omicron has proven to be far more contagious than the Delta variant, even if you are vaccinated. But if vaccinated, particularly if you are boosted, you are far less likely to die or to require a ventilator or to be placed in ICU or even hospitalized. That's the additional good news. Bye. We are all in this together, and it's not just about you. It's about all of us. So if you haven't done so yet, vax up, mask up, booster up for yourself, for the safety of your friends, colleagues, and loved ones. Think Nike and just do it. So we thank you and appreciate your flexibility, cooperation, and support as we continue our planning functions in this safe fashion. And as we embark on today's hearings, let's remain thankful for our blessings. Let's step up our game and increase our efforts to be kind, to stay safe, to look out for one another. We must do that. The suicide rate is so high, and you can make a difference in someone's life by looking out for one another. So stay strong, look out for one another, stay resilient, get vaxxed and boosted, but by all means, remain ever hopeful as we continue our journey to a better tomorrow together. So with that, I'm going to go to the agenda for today. The first item on our agenda is the draft minutes of the February 17th meeting. Is there a motion?
Move approval, Madam Chair.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Washington, the leap year birthday baby, and seconded by Madam Vice Chair. Madam Vice Chair?
Aye.
Commissioner Washington?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner?
Vote aye.
And Commissioner Giraldo?
Vote aye.
Okay, thank you. The ayes have it 5-0. The next item is item 4D, the final plats. So anyway, that's the consent agenda. I have no one signed up other than Ms. Vanderdoos. So is there a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, move approval of item 4D on the consent agenda in accordance with the recommendation of staff.
Second.
We have a motion by Madam Vice Chair, seconded by Commissioner Washington. Madam Vice Chair.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
And Commissioner Giraldo.
Vote aye, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we have, I'm going to tell you how the agenda is going to go ideally. Next, we're going to take item 9, followed by 8, followed by companion cases 6 and 7, and then item 3C and item 5. Item 3C, we promised to take at about 11 o'clock to accommodate a schedule. If wherever we are at about 11 o'clock, that's where we're going to take 3C. So item 9, I want to make sure we have Mr. Gross on.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. Okay. And then Mr. Berger, are you on?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, wonderful. And that's it. So Mr. Gross, let's go.
Okay, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Board. For the record, I'm Tom Gross, Planner 3 with the Historic Preservation Section. I note I do not have any slides this morning, just this verbal summary. The item before you this morning is the potential historic site designation of the property located at 3215 Perry Street in Mount Rainier, currently known as the Edward and Maggie Smith House, 68-074-03. At its public hearing on September 21st, 2021, the Historic Preservation Commission reviewed the documentation prepared for the subject property and the staff recommendation on the proposed designation. Based on the documentation, the staff recommendation, and the support of the property owner applicant, the HPC found that the proposed historic site could be found to meet historic site designation criteria in Subtitle 29, the Prince George's County Historic Preservation Ordinance. This recommendation was the basis of the joint public hearing held by the District Council and the Planning Board on January 18th, 2022. At that hearing, staff made a presentation on the history and significance of the property and the Historic Preservation Commission's recommendation. The property owner applicant provided testimony at the hearing in support of the proposed historic site designation with a request that the name of former owner Joe Israelson, a noted Maryland artist, be included in the property's name. Before the close of the record on January 25th, 2022, Written testimony was received from Ms. Israelson in support of the proposed historic site designation and the inclusion of her name in the property name. No other testimony was entered into the record of the joint public hearing. Per section 29-120.01, the planning board must transmit its recommendations on this matter to the district council within 30 days of the close of the record of the joint public hearing. Should the planning board concur with both the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Commission that the property be designated as a historic site and the property owner applicant's request to amend the property name to acknowledge former owner Joe Israelson, staff will prepare a transmittal letter from the planning board to the district council recommending that the property be designated as a historic site with the name Smith Israelson House. Should the planning board choose to make different recommendations to the district council, a revised transmittal letter will be prepared by staff. Madam Chair, this concludes staff's presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gross. First of all, I don't know if there are any questions. We were all there for the public hearing, so I'm just going to see if there's a motion right now.
Madam Chair, I move that we recommend to the district council the property at 3215 Parish Street, Mount Rainier, formerly identified as the Edwin Maggot Smith House, be designated as a Prince George's historical site with the new name Smith Israelson House, be forwarded to the county council, to the district council.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Motion by Madam Vice Chair, seconded by Commissioner Washington. Madam Vice Chair?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Geraldo?
Vote aye, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So before I go on to item 8, I just wanted to make sure apparently I messed up over here. I'm all excited about our Peter Goldsmith's 40th birthday. Did I get your name, last name wrong? I did. I don't know how I did that. Peter, we're so thankful to have you, and I don't know how I could mess your name up because getting you was like hitting the jackpot. So thank you, and happy birthday, happy big 4-0, Mr. Goldsmith. Okay, thank you. So now we're going to go to item 8. So item 8 is detailed site plan 17023-03 Addison Road. Mr. Bishop?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Present.
And Mr. Rivera?
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Now you have a number of people signed up. I presume if there are questions, Rachel Leitzinger?
They're here for questions.
Okay, but I have to call their names. Rachel, she's not signed up. Okay. Reagan Christopher? R. No, not on. Okay. Daniel Gradishar?
He's our soils engineer. He's here for well.
Yeah, he's on. And Joe, okay, you gotta help me. I mess this up all the time. Joe Lomangino?
He's not on this case.
Okay. All right. And then we have, we do have applicants exhibit number 1, which are proposed revised conditions. With that, Mr. Bishop, we're on.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Board. For the record, I am Andrew Bishop with the Urban Design Section. Item 8 is a detailed site plan for Phase 2 of Addison Road, DSP 17023-03, requesting approval for construction of 327 multifamily dwelling units in Building C. As noted, the applicant submitted additional information prior to the deadline and is proposing the removal of 2 conditions. Slide 2, please. The property is in central Prince George's County and planning area 72, Council District 5. Slide 3, please. The overall development is outlined in red and proposes a mixed-use development known as Addison Row. The specific area of this DSP is for Phase 2 and located on Parcel 2 in the northern portion of the site. Slide 4, please. The property is zoned MXD and is bounded to the east by single-family detached dwellings, north by vacant industrial property, south by Addison Road and west by WMATA Orange and Penn Central Railroad lines. The site is positioned between two metro stations, Cheverly Metro Station to the northeast and Deanwood Metro Station to the southwest of the site. Slide 5, please. The property is not in an overlay zone. Slide 6, please. The aerial image outlines the property in red and shows the site is currently being developed. The existing buildings approved in phase 1 can be seen in the southern portion of the site. Slide 7, please. The topographic map shows the outline of the previous warehouse building, which has been raised for the construction of the subject application. The site generally slopes to the north and west. Slide 8, please. The master plan collector Addison Road is south of the site and shown here in green. Slide 9, please. This is a bird's eye view of the property and shows the building constructed in phase 1 and provides context for the overall property. Slide 10, please. An illustrative rendering of the site plan was submitted by the applicant and shows the overall Addison Road development. Slide 11, please. This is the photometric plan for the overall site. Staff recommends additional lighting in the courtyards of the building being constructed in phase 2, and the condition has been included in the recommendation section of the staff report. Slide 12, please. The next 2 slides include details of the recreational facilities proposed with the application. The site plan shown here is an enlargement of the recreation area north of the building. Slide 13, please. This slide is of play equipment and site furnishings proposed on site. A condition has been included recommending that additional facilities be provided to meet the required value or additional information be provided by the applicant to justify its value. Slide 14, please. The 4-story multifamily building is consistent with the architecture proposed in phase 1 and is designed in a contemporary style using a combination of brick and fiber cement siding. Slide 15, please. Architectural techniques are proposed to break up the mass of the building by using vertical divisions and a variety of colored panels, creating a visually appealing facade. Staff finds the architecture submitted acceptable. Slide 16, please. A revised TCP2 has been submitted with this application and proposes a combination of on and off-site preservation. Slide 17, please. In conclusion, the urban design section is pleased to recommend the planning board adopt the findings of this report and approve detailed site plan DSP 17023-03 and type 2 tree conservation plan TCP2 007-2016-02 for Addison Row, Phase 2, subject to the conditions and findings in the staff report. The applicant has reviewed the report and is proposing revised condition language. Staff is in agreement with the removal of conditions 1C and 1E proposed by the applicant. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Let's see if the board has any questions of you at this time. Madam Vice Chair.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Washington.
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Okay, Commissioner Dorner.
No questions. Mr. Bishop, you should probably welcome Mr. Goldsmith to our club as well, since you are so fond and welcoming me.
Welcome, Mr. Goldsmith.
And then finally, Commissioner Geraldo.
Yeah, I'm in that club too. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you left that club. Okay. Thank you.
I have one question, 2 questions for Mr. Bishop, and perhaps I just missed it.
Yes.
The parking, is there any electric charges for EVs, for electric vehicles?
I'm going to have to let the applicant's representative answer that. There were none designated in the DSP.
Okay, and number two is I see that there is a dog park. Is there water availability right there for dogs?
None was proposed with the application, but again, I'm going to let the applicant's representative answer that question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Okay.
No further questions.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Giraldo. Mr. Rivera, you are on.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, Norman Rivera, here with my team, Chris Regan from Douglas Development, project manager, and Rachel Leitzinger from Dewberry, as well as Daniel, our soils engineer. Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Very concise, complete report. And thank you for informing the board that those two conditions were satisfied, so they're no longer needed, 1C and 1E on applicant's exhibit 1, as you just went through them. And I'll get to your questions, Mr. Giraldo, in a second. This is phase 2 of a 3-phase project. It's a ETOD, expedited transit-oriented development, being near Cheverly Metro and Deanwood Metro. So we're glad to bring this type of project to the county, as the county has a very high metro focus, and it provides much needed new housing in this area of Fairmont Heights, which is an historic community of Prince George's County. It has suffered from a drought of good newer housing. There's plenty of older housing, but obviously there's nothing new. This site sits on a former Fairview, was it Fairview? Fairfields Whole Foods, not Whole Foods as in a store, distribution site, which supplied food distribution for the whole DMV, sort of like Union Market did until it got redeveloped. So it replaces an obsolete industrial site. Hence, the county council back in 2006 rezoned it to MXT. So we've been working with the community. I know outreach is important. We're on our 3rd county executive, starting with the Honorable Wayne Curry, Mr. Baker, now Ms. Alsobrooks, 3 mayors of Fairmont Heights, 3 mayors of Cheverly, 3 Civic Association presidents, and others. But we're persevering, and we thank your staff for being consistent in recognizing that this project is meritorious of your recommendation for approval. So we accept the conditions that are established in the report as revised by Mr. Bishop and submitted by myself. With respect to the dog park, I just walked my dog this morning, and the way the dog park is situated, Mr. Giraldo, it's down the hill. See, if you look at the top of the rendering there, that's where the metro lines and Amtrak are. So it slopes fairly steeply down, which is a good run for the dogs. So we did not put in a separate water line, but as my son said, who lives in Baltimore City by the harbor, our apartments are right there. We water them before and after, and that's how they get their water. If it's really a big thing, we can run a separate water line, but it would have to cut through those environmental areas, and we just didn't want to have any more intrusions. But basically, the water is available in your apartment, back at your apartment. You can bring your water with you if you wish to, if you choose to do so, but there is not an official water line there. But the rest of the dog park is very well designed. It's on sheet 3. I don't know if Mr. Bishop wants to put it up, but we have 2 separate dog parks, one for smaller dogs, one for larger dogs. So my dog is sort of in between her, but she's very brave. So she goes to the big dog area in our park. So she doesn't care. She's half pit bull.
She's a big dog.
She's a big dog. She's a pit bull. They can't do nothing to her. And it's very nicely amenitized recreational facility otherwise, as Mr. Bishop put up. Right now, we're in phase 1, which the units are up and being leased by Greystar very well. And then the recreational facility area, which you see here, is the ultimate. Right now, it's temporary because it's behind the first set of buildings, and we didn't want to put it in the back, make people walk. So once we finish phase 2 construction, we move this park. This will be the new park behind both buildings, and there'll be pathways and wayfinding signage to get you there, as well as to the dog park. So it's a very cohesive development. In terms of outreach, we've taken the mayor of Fairmont Heights and her staff, as well as the local community group, to walk through the buildings and walk through everything. so they get a feel for it, because this is really the only thing that's been developed there in 30 years. There was the Wonder Bread store across the street, you'll all may remember, and other smaller industrial sites. It was largely industrial with the apartments and some scattered, I mean, not scattered, but single family detached homes. So everybody welcomes it. We want to be here in the neighborhood. And I think, was there another question, Mr. Giraldo? I forgot. Was it dog park?
Well, the other question was whether or not you're going to have any EV charging stations in the parking. And the reason I say that is because there was a recent article in the Washington Post with regards to the lack of EV charging stations, which is creating problems for owners of EVs. And I just think that, you know, the future is going to be EVs, and the more charging stations that are present, the better it is for the residents.
I would agree. I have to let the applicant speak to that. We didn't think of that earlier. I do know that the county council, I think following state lead, at least the county council recently passed legislation to require in single family new construction an EV port, if you will, that every garage has to have an EV outlet, whatever that is. But I don't know if in fact we have that here. Chris, are you on?
Okay, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Chris who?
Christopher Regan.
Okay, got it. Okay, okay. Oh, so this had Regan Christopher on here, so it's Christopher Regan. I'm sorry. Okay.
Must have been in the service.
Yeah. So it's not under, and then look under R too. No, not on. Okay. Not on, Mr. Rivera.
Well, I can't speak for him. I do understand the situation. And what I can do is say that I don't know from an engineering standpoint if you just plop them in there. Rachel's on the line from Dewberry. I don't know if, from a technical standpoint how that works. I don't think we'd be opposed to it. I just don't know how it would fit in this site plan itself. But prior to signature approval, perhaps we can look at that, Mr. Giraldo, and say EV stations to the extent reasonable or something, we would place those conveniently located for the residents.
So that's your
Okay.
proper for a condition? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rivera. Anything
I-
else? Okay.
I'm
No
fine.
additional questions, Commissioner Geraldo? Okay.
I'll
Okay,
just let the poor dogs, you know, suffer in the heat.
No question. So they're close to their apartment.
Okay.
okay. So Mr. Rivera, anything, okay. So if there are no other questions, Mr. Rivera, anything else from you?
That's it, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you. And I'm going to go get some chili later and listen to Lauren Hill.
Okay, there you go. We listened to Lauren Hill this morning before we commenced planning board. Everyone in here. So anyway, so with that, there's no other folks signed up. So I will enter, and if there are no other questions, we will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve DSP-17023-03 and TCP2-007-2016-02, along with the associated conditions as outlined in staff's report and is further modified by applicant exhibit number 1, in addition to the applicant's proffered condition with regards to EV or electric vehicle charging stations.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Washington, seconded by Madam Vice Chair. Madam Vice Chair.
But I.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
But just for discussion, I'll also point out it's not just the county council that's taken the step forward with the EV stations, but we actually just had a press release this morning for Montgomery Parks and Prince George's County Department of Parks and Recreation that we have a partnership with Pepco to create 94 charging spaces across 26 different parks over the next probably 6 months or so. So we're full in on this as well. So we appreciate that help, Mr.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Dorner and Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Okay, the ayes have it 5-0. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Rivera. The next item on our agenda is item 6 and 7. They are companion cases. Detailed site plan 20019 and departure from design standard 687 and alternative compliance. So anyway, it's Dash Inn at Marlboro Pike Store 7552. Ms. Butler, are you on? Yes, there you are. And Crystal Hancock, are you on?
Yes, Madam Chair. Good morning.
Wonderful. Mr. Lynch?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Dan Lynch on behalf of Dash Inn. Also note, Mr. Desco did sign up, but he signed up only in the event that wasn't able to resolve a scheduling conflict.
Okay, wonderful. I do have, I was getting ready to call his name. I don't know if he's on. Can you look under the M's? I don't see him.
No, he's not on.
He's not on. Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. With that, I'm going to turn to Ms. Butler.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Board. For the record, I'm Tiara Butler with the Urban Design Section. The project before you is item number 6 and 7, detailed site plan DSP-21009 and DDS-687 for Dash Inn Marble Pike, store number 1552, which is a detailed site plan to construct a 4,508 square foot food and beverage store, gas station, and 3,216 square foot car wash, with a companion departure from design standards to reduce the width of the buffer yard required for section 4.6 of the landscape manual along the site's frontage of MD 725 Marble Pike, and to utilize the landscape planted material within the public utility easement to count towards section 4.6 compliance. Next slide, please. This site is located in Prince George's County Planning Area 75A and Council District 9 as identified in the blue colored area on the map. Next slide, please. This site is located in the southwest quadrant of the intersection of Marble Pike and Crane Highway. The site boundary is outlined in the vicinity map in red. Next slide, please. The subject property is zoned light industrial I-1 as shown in the gray colored area on the map. Next slide, please. This arterial photo shows the existing conditions of the property, which shows the existing Marble Shell gas station and car wash development. The existing site is to be raised and rebuilt for the construction of this proposed development. Next slide, please. This site contains slopes, which is outlined in the red contour lines on the map. Next slide, please. This slide shows the master plan right-of-way, which identifies the future freeway outlined in orange, MD Route 725 Marble Pike as a primary roadway as highlighted in pink, and US 301 Crane Highway as an arterial roadway as shown in red. This DSP does not propose any improvements within the right-of-way. Next slide, please. This slide shows the bird's eye view of the property, which shows the existing conditions of the site and the existing gas station and car wash. Next slide, please. This slide shows the proposed 4,508 square foot food and beverage store and gas station with 8 fuel dispensers and a 216 square foot car wash. The site has 2 access points, one located along MD 725 and one located along US 301. The proposed building has a gas canopy are oriented facing US 301. The proposed plan shows the dumpsters located behind the building on the northwest part of the site within the 2-lane drive aisle leading to the car wash. The proposed 12-foot by 40-foot loading space is located between the rear of the building and the car wash drive aisles. The site is proposing a total of 44 parking spaces to include 2 handicap accessible spaces and 2 bike racks. There will be 22 spaces to surround the food and beverage store, 4 additional spaces that are provided in the northwest corner of the site, and there are 18 spaces proposed to be to serve as vacuum stalls to accompany the car wash. A condition has been included to request the removal of 1 parking space in front of the food and beverage store to increase the width of the parking islands to provide additional trees to meet the landscaping requirement. Next slide, please. This slide shows the landscape plan. The landscape plan provided is subject to the DSP, contains the required schedules and demonstrates conformance with the landscape manual, with the exception of section 4.3 and 4.6. As part of this DSP, the applicant filed an alternative compliance AC-21022 relative to sections 4.2, 4.3, 4.6 of the landscape manual. The applicant has revised the landscape plan to meet the requirements of the landscape manual for section 4.2, but has yet to satisfy section 4.3. The site has an excess of parking, and staff found that section 4.3 could be satisfied with the removal of 1 parking space to widen the landscape islands to provide shade trees, which has been conditioned. And this would eliminate the need for alternative compliance for section 4.3 of the landscape manual. The applicant also requested an alternative compliance from section 4.6, buffering development from streets from the landscape plan along MD 725, which abuts the north of the property. The applicant was required to provide 20-foot wide landscape buffer, but is only able to provide 11.5 feet. The applicant is proposing to provide an additional 186 planting units. However, those planting units are located within the PUE adjacent to the right-of-way. All plant material is required to be located outside of the PUE to ensure survivability. And a departure has been filed to reduce the buffer width required by section 4.6 of the landscape manual along the site's frontage, MD 725 Marble Pike, and to utilize the landscape materials planted within the PUE to count towards section 4.6 compliance. And staff is in support of this departure. Next slide, please. This slide shows the architectural elevations for the food and beverage store. The applicant is proposing modern architecture style for both buildings. The food and beverage store will have a glass retail front and a sloping roof line that falls from the front to the back of the structure. The food and beverage store is a 1-story building with varied materials to include brick veneer, metal panel, metal coping, aluminum composite panel, exposed steel, heavy timber wood beams, natural wood doors and siding, and then the proposed building height is approximately 19 feet with 2 wooden double doors at the front elevation. Next slide, please. This slide shows architectural elevations of the car wash. The proposed car wash is approximately 17 feet and consists of brick veneer, metal panel, metal coping, and hollow metal doors. Next slide, please. This slide shows architectural elevations of the gas station canopy and dumpster enclosure. The proposed 127 by 48 foot gas canopy will be 17 feet tall and consists of similar building materials as the gas station and food and beverage store. And the proposed dumpster will be 8 feet in height. Next slide, please. This slide shows the proposed signage for the site. The site features a combination of painted graphics, building mounted signs, freestanding and directional signs to include fuel canopy signs and pylon signs. The food and beverage store will have a 35.89 square foot building mounted sign located in the right side of front elevation that reads Dash and Kitchen in illuminated channel letters. The food and beverage store will include a 39-foot full color graphic on the east side of the building and a 39-foot all black graphic on the west side of the building. The gas canopy will have an orange and green logo Dash In sign on the north and west elevation. And then the car wash will contain a Splash In logo with Halo Lit enter letters located at the entrance of the car wash and Halo Lit exit letters located on the exit of the car wash. A 25-foot tall Splash In pylon sign is proposed along the southwest corner near the car wash. An approximate 27-foot sign is being proposed in the northeast corner of the site for Dash In. This exceeds the 25-foot height requirement. The applicant has indicated that the proposed sign will include 3 gas types, which will allow for a maximum of 50 feet. However, the sign dimensions that have indicated that only 2 gas types are being proposed, and a condition has been added requesting that the applicant revise the proposed height of the freestanding pylon sign to 25 feet or revise the sign details to reflect that there are 3 fuel types being proposed to meet the 50-foot requirement. Next slide, please. This slide shows the truck turning exhibit, which demonstrates how trucks circulate throughout the site. Next slide, please. And with that, urban design staff recommend that planning board adopt the findings of this report and disapprove alternative compliance AC-21022 for section 4.6, buffering developments from street of the 2010 Prince George's County Landscape Manual along the site's frontage MD 725 Marble Pike. Approved departure of design standards DDS-687 to reduce the width of the buffer required for section 4.6 of the 2010 Prince George's County Landscape Manual buffering developments from streets along the site's frontage MD 725 Marble Pike, and approved detailed site plan DSP-21009 for Dash Marble Pike number 1552, subject to the conditions found on page 13 and 14 of the staff report. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Butler. Let's see if the board has any questions of you at this time, Madam Vice Chair.
No questions at this time. Thank you, Ms. Butler.
Okay, and Commissioner Washington,
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Dorner,
No questions, thank you.
and Commissioner Giraldo.
Just, Ms. Butler, I didn't see it. So this is, thank you for your presentation, by the way, I'm sorry. So they're constructing a brand new gas station. Am I right that there's no provision for electric vehicles?
There's no provision, but the applicant might be able to speak to EV or possible future EV
Okay.
electric vehicle charging.
Thank you so much. No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch, we're ready for you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, Dan Lynch with the law firm McNamee Hosey here on behalf of Dash Food Stores, Inc. We're pleased again to come before you with another station that we operate in Prince George's County, where we're proposing a major redevelopment of that station. We've been before you on other sites, those located in College Park, 3 sites located in Clinton, a site located in Laurel, as well as other sites located throughout Prince George's County. This site, some of you may remember, I think it was first developed in, I believe, in 1994. I think it was previously occupied by a tobacco warehouse. Since that time, my clients have purchased the site. And then again, as part of its overall re-imaging and redevelopment program, it's next in line for all the buildings on the site to be removed. And then those buildings to be replaced with a brand new food and beverage store, a brand new car wash, as well as a brand new gas canopy and gas presentation. We have reviewed the staff report associated with this case, and I'd like to thank Ms. Butler for her hard work on this. We've gone back and forth with regard to the alternative compliance, with regard to loading, and as a result, I think we're coming forward you with a strong recommendation of approval that we've reviewed those conditions, and the conditions are acceptable to the applicant. I understand there's probably some questions with regard to the EV stations, and at this point, I'd be happy to just jump into those and address any questions as to electrical vehicle stations and lack thereof on this site. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see if there are questions of Mr. Lynch. Should I start with you, Commissioner Giraldo?
That's fine, thank you. Right, Mr. Lynch, to me, it just seems short-sighted on the part of the applicant not to put in electric vehicle charging station. I mean, we have 7-Eleven and Royal Farms at least have set up the infrastructure to put it in. So I'm just at a loss, given where the nation is going in that to me, it would make sense that you would have more people even coming in to use the food and beverage. Is the applicant on that they could at least speak to it? If you can't, Mr. Lynch, I understand you've
No,
been
no,
an attorney.
I'm well prepared to speak to that, Commissioner.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of thought has been put into this, especially with regard to this site and other sites that my clients are looking at redeveloping. Now, what we're trying to figure out, or what we've basically determined, is which sites that we operate are appropriate for electrical vehicle stations. Now, I think we have to start from the premise and from, I think, the facts that have been presented to us, and that we have the data that we have collected, that most folks that own electric vehicles are going to be charging from their homes. Okay. It is the most convenient place to recharge your electric vehicle. You basically come home at the end of the day, you pull your car up to your home or to your apartment and plug in, and then you don't have to worry about how long it takes, because you'll be there for a sufficient amount of time for that car to fully recharge. The next location we have found where folks are going to be recharging their vehicles are at their place of work. Okay, so for instance, they pull into work. Again, once they plug their car in, they're going to be there for probably an 8-hour period, and their car will have sufficient time to recharge. We have also found that regardless of, I think, the feeling, I think, out there in the general public, and when I say general public, just in terms of planning, I think that gas stations are probably one of the least likely places that folks are going to recharge their vehicles, especially a neighborhood station. When I say that is that unless they're going to be staying at the station and shop for like 30 minutes or so, they're probably not going to get a sufficient recharge to really make a difference. So normally where they're going to recharge is going to be places where they're going to spend a longer period of time other than at a gas station. Okay. So what we're looking at is putting these charging stations into our sites. Okay, they're located off of major travel corridors such as highways, interstate highways, where folks who are traveling for maybe a distance of 300 miles or more, which is probably the normal distance of an electric vehicle, will be looking for a recharge, and they'll have the ability to sit and wait and have that vehicle recharge. So for instance, we have a site now located off of 95 in Laurel. That would be an excellent place to put in charging stations. We have other sites located off of 295, another opportunity to put in charging stations. But more of your neighborhood stations where you're picking up your local neighborhood traffic, we just don't see it as that great of a demand for electric vehicle charging stations. And again, I think everyone's trying to get their hands around this in terms of where's the most appropriate place to put in these electrical vehicle stations. Okay, but the way that we're looking at it is also very consistent with the way that the U.S. Department of Transportation is looking at the location of these electrical vehicles charging stations. The U.S. Department of Transportation is looking at creating these electrical vehicle charging station corridors that kind of reflect the same thought process that we have. That is, they should be located in gas stations located along major travel corridors such as the I-95 corridor. And they also have concluded that most folks who own an electrical vehicle are going to be recharging at their homes. I mean, basically, the point of the electrical vehicles is to stop people from having to go to the gas station to fill up. And by putting these stations in the neighborhood, putting these electric charging stations in neighborhood stations, that kind of goes against the basic thought process. So again, we're looking at this carefully, because if we're going to be installing these charging stations, we want to make sure that they're going to be installing them at our locations where they make the most sense and where they'll get the greatest use. We really don't want to put the station in just to put a station in. We want to make sure that it is going to be addressing consumer demand. And that's what this is all about, addressing consumer demand. And at the present time, and I know you indicate that may be short-sighted, but at the present time, we don't see a need for electrical vehicle stations at your normal local gas station. We do see the need at, for instance, our stations are located in major travel corridors, but we don't see it at the stations such as this located in Marlboro Pike. And hopefully that addresses your question.
Well, I guess it addresses my question. I respectfully disagree, but I understand the applicant's position. It's just that while the demand may not be here today, it's certainly to come. When you consider, for example, Tesla has a 7 to 8 month waiting list. The Ford 150 has an equally long waiting list. So that just gives you an idea in terms of the demand that's out there for electric vehicles. But
Okay.
Thank you for the explanation.
Sure.
Commissioner Dorn, okay, and Commissioner Geraldo, I was thinking, you know, maybe we can add it as not a condition, but a consideration that in the future, should there appear to be more demand for this, the applicant would explore the possibility of charging stations.
We'd be more than happy. That's fine.
Okay, so that would be good as a consideration, not a condition, but something that would be, so it's flagged should there should a demand arise. Okay, with that, I started with you, Commissioner Geraldo, this time. I'm going to turn to Madam Vice Chair to see if you have any questions, because then we got our 11 o'clock item soon. Okay, no questions. Commissioner Washington?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Dorner?
No questions, and I appreciate the applicant's offer for the consideration, and that'll be something that's taken into account in the future.
Thank you. Okay, and Mr. Lynch, you get to wrap up. Is there anything else you care to add?
Nothing further. Again, we agree with the staff's recommendation and accept the conditions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and disapprove AC-21022, approve DDS-687, and approve DSP-21009, along with the associated conditions as outlined in staff's report, in addition to adding the consideration to explore EV charging stations at some point in the future as conditions warrant.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Washington, seconded by Commissioner Geraldo. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Vice Chair?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner?
Vote aye.
And Commissioner Geraldo?
Vote aye.
The ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Ms. Butler and Mr. Lynch. Okay, so we're now ready for our 11 o'clock item, which is the 2022 Prince George's County Comprehensive Economic Development Strategic Action Plan. It is a briefing on this plan. I'm going to check to make sure we have Ms. Fielson on. Jacqueline? Jackie? She's not on? Okay, she's somehow not on. Let me make sure.
Madam Chair, she's here.
Okay. There she is. Okay, got it. Mr. Iannucci, David Iannucci, are you on?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Wonderful. Mitchell Horowitz, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. And Jonathan Warren?
Yes, hello.
Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah, you did great.
Okay, thank you. And then Richard Clinch?
Sure, thank you.
Wonderful. That concludes the sign-up list for today. So I'm going to turn to Ms. Filson to please present. Thank you. Okay, so are you having technical challenges?
Madam Chair, I can. Okay.
What? Okay. Ms. Scholas, can you jump in then?
Sure, I can jump in. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Katina Scholars, Division Chief of the Countywide Planning Division. On behalf of Ms. Jacqueline Filson, Planner 4 of the Countywide Planning Division, and also the project manager and facilitator for the 22 Comprehensive draft economic strategic action plan. The purpose of this project, which was initiated in early 2020, was to update the highly successful 2013 Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, which is titled Economic Drivers and Catalysts, a targeted economic development strategy for Prince George's County, and prepared on behalf of the Planning Department and implemented by the Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation. To assist in the development of the...
Ms. Shoulders, I'm going to stop you for a second because I should have announced this. I do want to, this is going to take some time, and following this one, we will have item 5. So I just want to make sure that those folks who are signed up for item 5 know that this one will take a while, and they will be next. Thank you.
Okay. To assist in the development of the plan, the Planning Department procured the services of the University of Baltimore's Jacob France Institute Takanabe Partners Consulting Team. The strategic planning process for this involved broad-based steering committee and wide-ranging collaborative public-private engagements with economic development stakeholders from the private industry, the economic and workforce development, higher education, real estate development, and community and government leadership. It is my pleasure to present Mr. David Iannucci, President and Chief Executive Officer of Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation, on behalf of Ms. Angie Rogers, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for the Economic Development in the Office of the County Executive. And also from the Jacob France Institute / Takanabe Partners Consulting Team, Dr. Richard Clinch, Director of the Institute, and Mr. Mitch Horowitz, co-founder and principal of Takanabe Partners. And also we have Jonathan Dworin here to speak if needed. And I will turn it over to Mr. Iannucci.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, David Iannucci, President of the Economic Development Corporation. It's a great pleasure to be in front of you and to talk about this new strategic plan for Prince George's County. I really want
to take a breath, and it's a great pleasure to see you and have you present before us. So we're excited to see you.
Thank you. My neighbor, Ms. Hewlett. So I really want to thank the Commission for their ongoing support for this effort, both financial and staff. You are responsible for the work of the 2013 plan, and Jackie Filson, we're very grateful for her leadership, Mr. Berlage, and of course, the consultant for the University of Baltimore. This has been a very important process. I will say, quite frankly, that the COVID switch to virtual created some challenges for the type of dynamic discussions that we had in 2013. Doing it by Zoom created a real need to kind of reach beyond the normal process to make sure we were hearing from everyone. I think we did the best we could from this very different process. I consider the 2013 plan the most successful strategic plan in the history of Prince George's County. We of course, used that plan to lead the state of Maryland in job growth for 6 consecutive years. And the Commission's leadership in helping us to achieve that is greatly appreciated. But I think what we recognize is there's still work to be done. And there's still growth that we need, and there's an equity issue that we're much more conscious of now than we were before, and that's reflected in some of the recommendations. There are a number of key differences between this plan and the 2000 plan, but in a lot of ways it's an iteration of that plan. For instance, we talked significantly in this plan about placemaking. That was not something we talked about in 2013. We understand now the importance of placemaking to creating those environments where workers want to live, and ultimately where those workers are attractive to employers. COVID, of course, is a big change from last time. It's had a major effect on our unemployment rate. We lost close to 48,000 jobs from the depth of the COVID recession. My estimate is that we have recovered about 85% of those lost jobs since then, which is really right in the middle of the pack for counties in Maryland, and that's important. And I would have said that but for crazy situations like an invasion of Ukraine, that we're on our way to by the end of 2022 to recovering all of our lost jobs, and I hope regaining our leadership in the state of Maryland. That is, of course, something we're all going to have to sort through in the next few months and the effect on the economy. But I really want and grateful for the Commission's leadership, financial support, giving us access to Miss Jackie Filson, who's just a wonderful asset. And I really thank the consultants. And I'll stop now, Sheila, and let the consultants take over. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Iannucci, and thank you very much for your hard work. And before the consultants come on, we wanted to take that opportunity to say thank you. And you know, I just have to say this because we at the commission really, and thank you for the kudos for the 2013 plan as well. And it was a group effort, obviously a team effort, and so you know we all share in the kudos for that. And recognizing the impact of the COVID pandemic on our economy, I just want to give a shout out to our planning board and our planning staff here and the commission, because we could see what was going to be coming down the pike with this pandemic, and we never stopped meeting. You know, we know other entities stopped, but we never stopped meeting and conducting business and approving applications that would enhance the economy for Prince George's County, enhance the accessible base, and prevent doors from closing. Because we actually heard from the private sector, thank goodness for you, because our engineering firm might have had to close. Some did, some consolidated, and some law firms would have had to close, and that would have been the loss of more jobs, more businesses. And we wanted to make sure we did our part to promote economic development, good economic development, and good good economic development, and to make sure that we did our part to increase the accessible base in Prince George's County. So thank you, because we recognize that economic development is critical in Prince George's County. And so that is why we're excited to hear from the consultants. And I just had to give a shout out to our board and our planning team for moving forward like a well-oiled engine. So thank you for that. And so next you want, Ms. Schollers, do you want to turn to Mr. Horowitz first, or how do you want to do this? Okay, Mr. Horowitz, were you ready to go next?
Actually, we're going to share the presentation, and Dr.
Clinch.
Mr.
Clinch.
Yes.
Dr. Clinch, okay. So Dr. Clinch, I don't see you there though.
I'm here in the top left.
Oh, there you are. I see. You know what? Sometimes, honestly, these little, we're looking at these big screens and these little boxes, and the boxes drives me crazy because they move around all the time. So I see you, Dr. Clinch. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could advance to the next slide. Madam Chair and board members, thank you for the opportunity today to come here and talk about this effort. This was about 18-month, 2-year effort to prepare a really comprehensive economic development strategy for the county, building on the 2013 strategy. We really engaged in 6 core tasks. The first 4 were really doing analytics on the county's position and performance in terms of the economy and workforce. And then in task 5 and 6, we looked nationally at best practices nationally and in 5 peer jurisdictions to build on the data we developed in the research to develop a strategy for the county, building on the success of the 2013 strategy that we were also the consulting team on. So for today, I'm going to briefly go over the core findings. So we could talk all day about the many analyses we conducted. But we analyzed the performance of the county's economy. We identified clusters. We identified drivers. We looked at in depth on how real estate conditions were impacting the county and the county's workforce, and then building on these, developed a strategy for the county. So I'm going to present kind of the data and then pass it over to Mitch to talk about our core strategies. So if we could hit the next slide, please. I'll really start with what we did was we really looked at the performance of the county's economy. Now, we were the authors of the 2013 strategy, so we really built on the tremendous success the county experienced, as Dave Iannucci talked about, in terms of leading the state in growth for the years subsequent to the strategy. As it's implemented many of the core elements we recommended in 2013. And so the goal for this strategy was to really build on this tremendous success and identify new ways to go forward, especially focusing on placemaking. So what's the basis in terms of economic growth? We can see that the county has experienced strong growth prior to COVID, leading the state and regions in growth, but lagging somewhat the national performance. And what really drove that growth were the clusters, these core clusters that drive the county's economy. Right? From a cluster, what we mean are businesses that have a competitive advantage in the county that are really driving the growth of the county. So these counties, as you can see on the slide, the chart on the right-hand side, they really were the drivers of growth in the county prior to the recession, prior to COVID, and are expected to continue to drive county growth going forward. And that's what the slide on the right shows. So if we could advance to the next slide. Now, as we talked about, the county experienced very strong economic growth. So what were the drivers of that growth? In terms of clusters, there were two really standout sectors that stood out, which was the travel and tourism sector, but more importantly, the technology and commercialization and innovation activities that are occurring in the county. So I think the real change we've seen since 2013 is the county is really doing a tremendous job at capitalizing on the tremendous federal and university research capacities and resources existing in the county, which we just talk about very briefly in terms of these core anchor assets. And we looked, well, this chart shows publications, but Prince George's County is really a powerhouse in research. It accounts for 2% of peer-reviewed publications nationally, but only 0.3% of national publication. So the county has tremendous federal, university, state research drivers. Now, another key driver was federal procurement. And much of the federal procurement that goes on in the county is really in technology-based industries such as information technology services. So technology-based procurement experienced tremendous growth over this period and really was a core driver of the growth of the technology sector in the county. And this growth it's now approaching $9 billion in the most recent federal fiscal year since we updated this. And the nation, the world has really caught on to what's going on here in Prince George's County. When you look at venture capital funding, a lot of the very successful companies that are doing federal procurement and research and developing new commercialization-driven activities are attracting venture capital. So the county has seen tremendous growth, growing from a very small base of venture capital back when we did the last study to much higher levels, really outpacing the state and nation in terms of the growth, admittedly from a small base, but experiencing very strong and rapid growth in venture capital investment. If we could hit the next slide. Now, related to that, the county is also uniquely positioned in terms of its workforce assets. And there's a huge interest, as we all know nationally, in attracting a more diverse talent base across the nation. And Prince George's County really has these tremendous assets with two colleges, Bowie State and College Park, and a strong community college system. The county has a very strong and diverse talent base. So one of the things we looked at was diversity. And when you look at counties with large African-American populations, the county has among the most educated African-American populations in the nation. That's the slide on the left-hand side, or the chart on the left-hand slide. What types of occupations do these people work in? A lot of them in the middle are in these engineering, computer, and science occupations that are really driving this region's economic growth. So the county has really access to a very strong and diverse workforce. And the county also, with two colleges and a very strong community college system and private career schools and others, has a great workforce development system. So College Park is the leading engineering school in the region, leading computer science school in the region. Bowie State has significant innovation assets. So this county offers access to a top-tier technology workforce talent pipeline that is among the strongest nationally. And the county is ranked second in terms of computer science and engineering degrees awarded to African-American students nationally. So technology is driving the county. The county's strong workforce is driving the county's economic growth. Now, if we go to the next slide, and then I'll go over the boring economic stuff and get to the exciting strategic planning stuff. A lot of this really was, as we talked about, significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, was there a question? I heard something. Nope. the county was very exposed to COVID. When this chart on the left-hand side looks at the employment in COVID vulnerable industries, so things like hospitality that are significantly impacted by the pandemic and the related shutdowns. So the county had a much higher concentration of both businesses and employment in these very COVID vulnerable industries. And that translated, as Dave Iannucci had talked about, in terms of large numbers of job losses. So when we did this report, what we found is that there was pretty widespread unemployment. The county had the highest level of unemployed people per job opening in the county using Maryland Department of Labor data, with almost 2.5 applicants per job. So that's come down. The county has done much better. It's gone from having the highest mismatch here to the sixth largest, and just under about 1 applicant per job. So this has improved substantially since we did this. And the other area, as we talked about, was the uncertainty caused by COVID and also current economic conditions in terms of real estate. So we did a very deep dive in the analysis into real estate conditions in the county. And the core issue is, we talked to most of the major developers active in the county, and there's a lot of uncertainty about how COVID will impact long-term real estate demands in the county, especially for office. But we feel that the placemaking efforts underway in the county and the transit-oriented development emphasis in the county will continue to position the county strongly for future economic growth. My goal now is to hand this over to Mitch Horowitz, who will now talk about what our core strategy elements are.
Thank you, Richard. And again, a great pleasure to be with all the commissioners, and thank you, Madam Chair. If you go to the next slide. One of the key principles of this, Richard indicated it in the tasks that we did, but it's how we think, and as you heard from Ms. Iannucci, we're thinking very much about how to advance overall economic development capacities in the county, and we have now a really strong foundation from what was built back in 2013. And so I want to take 2 slides just to kind of give you an overview, and then I'm going to dig into a little bit more of the strategic thinking behind how we advance what I consider to be a very robust strategic action plan. And this work, just so you have the context, I mean, we had a very significant advisory board, that steering committee that was very active, 34 members, many discussions with them. In addition, we met with the Economic Recovery Task Force a couple of times. We had discussions with the County Council, and Councilman Harrison was very active as part of the steering committee. And so, this is something that, while the numbers matter and the facts help set a context, how you develop a strategy really has to engage the stakeholders. And as Richard indicated, not only did we speak to the major real estate developers, we spoke to industry leaders, industry organization leaders, community leaders, and so forth. And so I think what has emerged here is a very strong foundation, both in the data, but also kind of in the ground truth and the sharing of ideas with a lot of the key stakeholders. So in terms of the principles, basically these are all best practices. The first 2 principles here around evolving economic drivers and addressing emerging issues really were the underpinning that got created back in 2013. And so for the first time, the county had a set of a focus on strategic industries that create wealth and allow for higher quality of life, and a lot of services and businesses providing services to the county to emerge. But we also were very focused around emerging issues to ensure that we had a high functioning ecosystem in which businesses had a great business environment to grow in. I think the next 2 principles are things that both recognize our national moment, but also recognize now that we have the strong foundation, how do we move forward and where's the next advances? And so this strategy is very intentional in ensuring inclusive economic growth. And it is not a side issue for us, as you'll see. It is integrated across every strategic priority. So we're thinking through the prism of inclusive economic growth. And at the same time, we now have an opportunity, because of the strength in both organizations that do economic development and workforce development in the county, to really amp up and build the kinds of public-private partnerships that really underpin the most successful economic development efforts across the country. So if you go to the next slide, the other kind of overview I want to provide to you is that as we think about how we build a really high-functioning strategy, it's really important that we connect the dots, that we understand our economic drivers, but then understand how we're going to work across strategic issues to enable each of these industry drivers to be more competitive. So we don't just have a targeted industry cluster analysis here, but we really have an integrated approach that tries to cut across traditional silos and build partnerships across the county's innovation, education, economic development, workforce, planning communities, because we all have to work together to make this successful. If you go to now I'm going to turn back to the actual situational assessment, kind of building on some of the data analysis that Richard showed. If you go to the next slide, the first principle about continuing a strategic focus on involving economic drivers, we took a very hard look at what was happening in the industry base, and what we were able to do is recognize things are evolving. And so going forward over the next 5 to 10 years, 4 key industry clusters really now are helping to define the wealth creation, the new income, the kind of the traded sector industries that can drive the tax base and all the other things that we all want out of economic development in the county. One is absolutely the federal government and remains very strong and very important, and Prince George's County continues to show its competitiveness. Interestingly, now with the county's leadership and working with the University of Maryland Medical System, hospitals and health services have emerged as their own sector. Before it was kind of linked in with a larger kind of biosciences. Information technology services, as Richard indicated, from the procurement data, but importantly, even from the venture capital, which is not always dependent upon government contracts, but is also building commercial-oriented technology businesses, and with the success, hopefully, in the years to come around quantum computing in the county. Information technology services is very robust in the county, and yet is a sector that we do have concerns about ensuring its continued growth and keeping up with the rest of not only this region, but nationally. And then we have a whole set of research-intensive industries from more of the kind of non-clinical biotech types of companies, instruments and controls, which are kind of building around the base of operations with NASA Goddard and NOAA in the region. And then more generally, just the research, development, and engineering sector that is such a big part of the backbone of activities that happen, of strong interchange with the universities and the federal labs. And then there are supportive economic drivers, and you heard Richard talk a little bit in the commercial real estate about the strength in logistics and distribution centers, and clearly the location of Prince George's County is quite strong in its road network and how it works within the overall regional economy. And of course, destination retail and things that have been very successful in recent years and are the backbone of what helps make placemaking go forward are also very supportive. So we again have a very robust regional economy here with several opportunity areas to continue the growth. If you go to the next slide, at the same time, we recognize that in each of these targeted industry clusters, there are different strengths and opportunities. And I'm not going to go through this chart, but in detail, but to understand the dynamics of each they have their own trajectories, and we need to be focused on them. And the way EDC is organized these days, they do bring this kind of industry cluster focus. And so we can have confidence going forward that working with the community, both the businesses and the education providers and workforce and so forth, that we can address the needs of these industry clusters. If you go to the next slide, gets at the next principle. And this is kind of moving into what might be thought of as the building blocks, the development resources. We like to think of them as development catalysts, which create the business environment for Prince George's County to compete. And we first took a very broad view of how are you doing across lots of different measures of economic development conditions, from talent, from technology generation through federal procurement, all the way through small minority business environment, workforce development. And for the most part, we're seeing real strengths. There are some areas that have mixed measures. Financial resources is for businesses. We're seeing great strength in the venture capital, but we'd love to see more working capital and other kinds of things to small businesses. In the workforce development, we're going to talk a lot about that, because I think we all recognize the strengths that Richard indicated, that it's kind of a great building block, but the tale of two counties that we have in Prince George's County, with a lot of people being left behind and not enjoying the fruits of this growing economy. And tax climate, this is unfortunately something that Prince George's County doesn't have a whole lot of control over, because a lot of that is set at the state level. And so you have to counter it by having really high value added in the business environment. We are, as a state, a high tax state, but hopefully we're also a high value state as well. And then quality of life, we're definitely seeing improvements. But as we looked at the data and as we discussed, crime and the quality of the K-12 schools still is something that needs to be continued to work at. And so they're very promising signs, but a lot of attention. So that sets the broad picture. But as we went into it much more with the stakeholder interviews and presented this kind of data, what we heard were three really key strategic priorities. One around growth opportunities, and how do we more effectively and build on the successes, support innovation and entrepreneurship, and ensure that that is really done in an inclusive way, so that the strong presence of Black and other BIPOC skilled folks can enjoy it, as well as stirring it up in terms of creating unique places. How do we create a collaborative culture across our industries? And how do we continue to engage our anchor institutions in a way that actually supports each of the industry clusters? So that's a very kind of forward-looking and very positive opportunity. On the human capital, here we have a need to continue to think about each of the clusters. And, talent is often the defining resource and whether you can be competitive for industries. And, Prince George's County has the opportunity to have some of the most diverse workforces available to industry. That's very important. But we also need to be thinking about how do we engage youth much more into not just STEM, but STEAM, and with the arts and really engaging them. I see you're nodding. My daughter's an artist. She went to MICA, and so I am supporting STEAM very much every day of the year. So
one of our fabulous recreation programs, we do STEAM programs all year long, and we have the A included for the arts. So, and then we have an annual STEAM fest for our youth too. One of the fabulous recreation programs that we have. So I love that, and people from NASA come and to see the youth so engaged with the representatives of like PEPCO, BGE, NASA, and it's just fabulous, and so many more. It's just fabulous. So you really touched on something that touches my heart. So.
Excellent, and yet, and we're going to spend more time on this on the next slide, but we recognize that Prince George's County has a burden, and we need to turn that into an opportunity, which is around ensuring all of existing workforce through adult education can really participate, gain the skills that are needed to really be a part of what is a very strong growing economy in the county. And then as David Iannucci indicated, we are recognizing now the efforts that your commission and the planning department has really helped lead. Plan 2035 really sets the context of placemaking, and that really is a maturation. We have learned in economic development that places do matter. That's how you attract talent. That's how you grow businesses, create innovation communities, and that's how people get to know you, even market the county. They think about your places, and so rather than worrying about specific places, this strategy as the economic development complement to all the other things going on in the county really is thinking very much more about policies and broad programs. And so we would like to see ways to strengthen that, and you're going to see some of the specifics we lay out here. Continue to strive to improve and streamline permitting, zoning, and related issues. We looked at best practices around the country, and you can't do it all at once, but you got to get better at it every single day. And then how do we ultimately develop the services? And you'll see to retain our existing businesses and help them grow in the county in these places. So we're going to go into the strategic action plan in a moment, but the third principle, I think, is something that I personally am just grateful that we are going to be reaching. So if you go to the next slide.
I have a question, Mr. Horowitz. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, please do. Thank you.
Okay. Principle 2, you have the weakness is the tax climate. What specifically do you mean? Is that a statewide issue? Is that a county issue?
Yeah, and Richard may want to jump in here as well, but certainly, we as a state, and I live, I've lived in the region since I've been married, so getting close to 35 years here. We are just a bit of a higher tax state, and particularly when you compare us, to our neighbors, south in Virginia, which now the competition is really starting to heat up. But Richard may want to speak a little bit more to the specific nature of the local taxes. Richard?
Can we make sure he's unmuted?
I muted myself. Sorry.
Okay.
I've been doing this in Maryland for about 25 years, and when I started out, Maryland was ranked in the mid-30s in tax effort by, let's say, the Tax Foundation nationally. We're now 45th, so we've been going the wrong way. In the last 5 years, we've gone from 40th to 45th. So the tax issue is really a state level issue. There's not a lot of variation within the counties on tax levels, but even then, the Prince George's County's local property tax, its income tax is as high as it can be. The property taxes are relatively high. So even within the state, there's not a lot of variance between the major counties. Montgomery, your major competitors, Anne Arundel, Howard, Montgomery, you're all towards the top locally, but this is really a tax issue for the state level, comparing nationally for the types of industries you're competing for, and especially relative to Virginia.
So when you say that it's a state tax issue, what is it, the state income tax, or are there other taxes associated with operating a business?
In fact, it's almost every one. Maryland's income taxes are high, Maryland's property taxes are relatively competitive, and Maryland's corporate income tax is high. So it's really all of the above, with the exception of property taxes. But the counties do have a relatively high tax burden as well, or property tax burden. So all of your three major taxes that impact business location, which would be corporate income, property, and individual income, Maryland's in the top in nearly every one except property.
Okay, thank you.
And it's in the middle to high tax for property. And again, this is not something the county can do anything about. It's the state tax ranking. But as Mitch had talked about, this is a way to get around this, is through specific targeted types of incentives to mitigate this effect.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you have to bring strategic focus. If you go to the next slide, in considering the situation facing the county regarding broad-based and inclusive economic growth, and we heard from Walter Simmons on this, we really face a situation of a tale of two counties. On the one hand, Prince George's County is a national leader in Black prosperity. And in fact, if you look on the left-hand diagram, what you'll see here is that you really stand out relative to the whole country on a census tract basis, and having the most high income, majority Black census tracts in the nation. And we know that this, wealthy, diverse, educated professional class is a backbone to why Prince George's County meets the moment. And we've had a chance to work with, major corporations for work we've been doing with HBCU schools of engineering. And they feel this. They know they need to become more diverse. Prince George's County is a place to do that today. But on the other hand, we have a really substantial base of workers who, as indicated here, who are less educated and in lower paid occupations, and many are being left behind. And this includes the large influx of uneducated international migrants who, create culture in our communities and are distinctive and are appreciated. But we need to help them become more economically viable and being able to participate, get the right kinds of skill sets. And at the same time, we continue to hear in the discussions with industry and other stakeholders that continuing to work at the K-12 public schools is really important. And again, they started a deficit. They have a population that is harder to reach and engage. When you look at the actual performance, this is something that needs to continue to work at. And again, this is a good use of public resources. So if we're using our tax dollars for these things, I think many of us in Maryland understand that is well worth the effort. So now this is very much a part of who we are thinking about when we think about the strategic action plan. And as David Iannucci indicated, this was not part of 2013 in a very explicit way. And then finally, the last element, which may be a little bit, if you turn this next slide, Principle 4, which might be a little bit of a kind of inside baseball about how do you really mature and continue to evolve a top-tier economic development program. But what really indicates it is when you're being a catalyst and the private sector is responding with you and building, so that you don't have to do everything to make economic development happen. And we could see across each strategic priority ways in which the county has matured and it has the capabilities now to engage the private sector in a very effective way. And we have built that into each of the strategic activities. So with that, this is.
Mr. Horowitz, I have
Yes.
another question. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
please, thank you. Oh, no.
How do you see or envision how nonprofits in the county can assist or partner in achieving these goals?
Essential. So this is not just private sector businesses. A lot of for instance, partnerships for jobs and skills are going to very much involve nonprofits. And in fact, one of the key elements in the workforce development strategy is leveraging the continued engagement with major nonprofits to see Prince George's County as a place to establish programming in concert with the county's efforts. In the placemaking initiatives, they are essential. I mean, we were just talking with the Madam Chair about the importance of the arts and who leads those kinds of efforts. It's nonprofits. And then actually in the Innovation Collaborative, one of the things that has really advanced here is much more community-based nonprofit entrepreneurial support services as well. So I shouldn't, when I say these public-private partnerships, I don't mean to imply it's only private sector businesses, but it takes the entire community to move these partnerships forward.
So
thank
let
you.
me ask you, if there was a philanthropic organization that was trying to address the issues of human capital and better education or workplace skills, where would you think that philanthropic organization should direct its funding or grants?
Right. So I hear what you're asking, and in fact, one of our recommended strategies is to actually build on what is already moving forward in the county about how to work with a range of nonprofits to advance. And I'm just turning to it because, as you can imagine, it's a pretty lengthy strategy. So I gotta have these in front of me. But what we're seeing here is things like the DC Central Kitchen or Jobs for the Future Skill Rise, Vehicles for Change. I mean, these are already the kinds of partners that have been solicited and are engaging. And it's only because you have organizations that like employ Prince George's County and the EDC that have the competencies to work with these kinds of organizations. And, before we didn't have that kind of strength in your economic development infrastructure. So if we, so if we move on to the next slide, this process in finalizing and developing the strategic plan, we've been very solicitous, and as been indicated earlier, the challenge of COVID for us actually made us go well beyond what would normally happen, because we wanted to make sure we understood that people were a little diverted themselves, and you had to make the extra effort to really get them to focus. And we got lots of really good input that helped us develop the strategic plan. But then once we had the plan in place, it has now been circulated for numerous drafts and quite a bit of time. And we received very detailed comments from 11 steering committee members and other reviewers. The good news is that it wasn't about changing the framework. It was about really being much more expansive to explain some of the key topics and make some of the connections. And then just to make sure that all of the activities ongoing in Prince George's County were referenced, and so people can see themselves in the strategy. And just to kind of pull out a few key items, we had data tables that talked about Hispanic Latino population, but we didn't expressly put it in the text, so we fixed that. Congressman Brown has been helping to stand up a Maryland Defense and Aerospace Consortium, which ties in very much to the research-intensive industries, and we made sure that was added to. Councilman Franklin really wanted us to talk about how to improve upon procurement and bonding and providing technical assistance to businesses as part of our first customer program. So all those things kind of helped us refine and deepen the action plans. And then, as I mentioned, there's, I mean, it truly is remarkable how many things are happening, and we just got asked to make sure we didn't miss any of those dots. And so with that, I want to kind of give you a sense of the overall strategy. If you go to the next slide, and just to kind of step back, this is kind of the overall integrated picture. We have strategic priorities. For each of the strategic priorities, we have partnership initiatives. Some are kind of more standalone, and others are kind of frameworks in which to advance the strategic actions. We also, in every single strategic priority, have built-in inclusion. Like I said, it has to be intentional. And so you're going to see in every single one of our supporting actions for each strategic priority. And then in the strategic plan itself, we pride ourselves on designing for implementation. We don't measure our success by completing a strategy. We measure our success by having what's happened in Prince George's County, by having it actually implemented and put into practice. Is for each action, we have why it matters, what are the key program design elements for guiding implementation, often with best practice references, what are the key resources required, and who might be some of the lead organizations. And so we hope we leave you something that we know you're going, with the great organizations you have at the, county exec and EDC and Employ Prince George's. They're going to move this stuff forward in collaboration with the planning department and in collaboration with universities and community college and so forth. But we know you're going to continue to fine tune it and get it to work right. But I think we now have 18 actions that really help define for the next 5 to 10 years. So we're not focused on the near term, recovery from COVID. What we are concerned about is the sustaining the trends that we've been seeing for the next 5 to 10 years. So with that, I'll pause. You may have a question on a specific action. Happy to take that. And David or Richard may want to add as well. Thank you for your time here.
Thank you, Mr. Horowitz. Appreciate it very much. And let's see, Mr. Iannucci, would you like to add anything? Or Dr.
Thank you for that outstanding presentation. On the supporting actions, you see the 18 here, and that's where we're particularly focusing on in terms of moving to the implementation stage. And it will take a number of years. I have a ballpark number. There might be a $2 million fiscal cost involved with doing all 18 of these at one time. Be spread out, but these are important things, and to move forward and make this strategic plan as successful in 2022 as the 2013 plan was, we really have to make sure that this is just not a document that sits on the shelf, but that actually gets taken up. So we're coming up with an idea of communicating to each of the partners that Mitch described and Rich described, their responsibilities to implement the various supporting actions. And that will, in many cases, involve seeking public financing for some of those. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Mr. Iannucci. Dr. Clinch, any comments? Oh, you're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
Stop doing that. I just wanted to point out that in the PowerPoint, which was provided, each of the 18 actions has a slide in the back. Too much to go through today, but if you had specific questions about any of those, you have them there, or we could talk about them here.
So we thank you, Dr. Clinch. We have the PowerPoint, which is frankly spectacular. I guess you know this, but each one of the planning board members must reside in Prince George's County, must reside by law, and we carry Prince George's County in our hearts. It really guides every single thing that we do, every decision that we make, and some of the decisions are tough because we have to make decisions within the parameters of the law, but we really are excited about this, excited about moving from the 2013 plan to the 2022 plan. We're excited about how inclusionary it is. So, so that everybody's involved, and we want to propel all of Prince George's County forward, not just segments, all of Prince George's County. So it's just very powerful. I'm going to see if that concludes everything. First, I want to see if there's any questions, and we may have comments. So with that, I'm going to turn to Madam Vice Chair to see if you have any comments or questions first.
Well, I don't have any questions. I just have not completed the thorough presentation, the document that we have, but I certainly plan to complete that. I want to thank everyone for the presentation. I was looking at the piece on nonprofits in the county, and it's something that we've been struggling with for quite some time. We have a number of nonprofits in the county, but the ability to work at the highest level is lacking in some degree, and that's one of the ways that Park and Rec and Park and Planning, we've been able to assist with that. And so we want to make sure that people understand that there are opportunities for nonprofits to do better, and that there are skills within Park and Rec to assist with developing some of those skills. So we want to take a look at all of that just from a comprehensive standpoint throughout the county. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Let's turn to Commissioner Washington to see if you have any comments or questions.
Hi. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, and thank you. This is an excellent presentation, and I certainly appreciate the commentary associated with it today. And I also would like to associate myself with Madam Vice Chair's comments with regards to nonprofit. I think that is still a huge opportunity area, because the nonprofits that were mentioned, Mr. Horowitz, that you referenced, were all outside of the county. So we definitely need to be thinking about strategies and opportunities to increase capacity for our in-county nonprofits. And the other thing I would ask about, I did not see it, and it may be buried in the details, but was there any discussion about retail, destination retail, when shopping? That has always been, you mentioned how diverse our county is, but a lot of our money, quite frankly, is spent outside of the county. Whether it's, we've done a lot over the last few years in terms of supermarket, grocery store establishments, but just high-end retail. I just wondered, was there any discussion as part of the process about that?
Sure. Yeah, no, go ahead, Richard.
So destination retail was one of the clusters we looked at, and it is performing pretty well in the county, but there are substantial leakages, as you've talked about. And it is one of the two supporting industries, kind of related to both the placemaking and in terms of the overall strategy as well in the strategy. So it's dealt with very, very substantively in the document. And the county has made great strides, in my opinion, over the last 15 to 20 years in attracting a much broader base of retail. I remember the days when it was more or less redlined for retail, and you've had much more substantial development. But there are areas, like I'm working in Bowie now, that have really seen a shift of retail activity, say from outside of the city to north to Crofton and Anne Arundel and other parts, but despite the relatively high income. So the county is still relatively underserved in retail, especially at the high end. This comes across wherever you talk about, but has made strides in the last 15 years in terms of the growth represented in the report. You'll see, when you see the full report, there's a large growth in employment in that sector, despite a declining national environment.
If I could add to that, of course, retail remains a major priority of the Economic Development Corporation. We actually have 2 staff people assigned to the sector. No other sector has that many. And pre-COVID, we were already seeing the changes in the retail industry. Online sales have surged, obviously, in the last 2.5 years. And that will have a permanent effect on the success of retail in the county and nationwide. Personal opinion that we have actually too much acreage in Prince George's County devoted to retail, not quality retail, but retail in general. And I think we'll have to look at the idea of many retail shopping centers, frankly, could be as many as 50 in the county, that could be repurposed for other uses, including multifamily and commercial uses and things like that. So we don't have too much, we don't have too little retail in the county, but we have too little quality retail. And I think with the reduction of retail acreage, we might strengthen those remaining shopping centers. But retail's changing, and COVID has greatly accelerated those changes.
Mr. Iannucci, thank you so much for your comments, and I'm so glad to hear that you all are intentionally and definitely staying focused on that. And I couldn't agree with you more. The pandemic has essentially shifted every industry, and retail being one of the primary ones. So thank you, and thank you, Mr. Clinch, for your comments as well. That concludes my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Washington. I'll now turn to Commissioner Dorner.
Yeah, I'll say thank you for the presentation and the detailed slides. I have a couple of suggestions where I think you definitely need to make improvements to answer stuff. It's not anything like detrimental. You have to do a lot of rewording, but I think you need to do some editing on some of these slides. Particularly where it says STEM, I think you need to insert that A. Because arts is certainly part of everything. Like this is super IT focused, which is understandable given the Route 1 corridor around Maryland. But arts shouldn't be left out in this. We make a very deliberate attempt to not have that happen in all of our county programming when we do parks and recreation programs, and it would be good if you guys would embrace it as well. So that way it's consistent across efforts as we're going forward. Something that you might want to include in here also is not only a focus on college educated students or people in here, but also internships for kids in the community. So this is like people who are under 18 who are about to get out or in high school maybe looking for different opportunities. On our end, over the summer, we could probably give you guys one of our brochures if you'd like to see it for the summer activities for our Parks and Recreation programs. Yeah, Madam Chair has one right now. So in there, in years past, I haven't seen the one for this year, but in years past, we always have a series of programming and computer skill programs that are at the Sports and Learning Center. I assume we're going to have it this year since we're back to in-person learning. Yep, thumbs up. Okay, that's good. Because that's also a way of fostering local talent and bringing them in. And those kids, that could be like a feeder program essentially to some of the other internships for businesses that you guys have proposed and you got called out for like funding and stuff. When I was in high school, I didn't go to high school here, but when I was in high school, we had work study programs also. So I went in and I worked for a couple hours every week at doing IT stuff for a state institution. And then I started at the help desk and I ended up doing all the server administration for them in college one summer because the person left and they didn't have anyone who knew how to do it. I didn't have any CS background or anything, but I knew how to do it because I had gotten those opportunities early on. So I was running a 500-person agency for a bit on the server stuff. Probably completely unqualified, but I had the hands-on training from a technical standpoint to know how to do that, even though my formal education wasn't there. And that could be a very good way of bringing people up in the county and helping out there. I would also insert something maybe in there about local scholarship opportunities. So as you're thinking about ways of incentivizing this or subsidizing it, think about local scholarship opportunities to take the students that we have here and put them into careers that we might need kind of going forward. If it's data centers or if it's programming, whatever it might be that you're kind of highlighting here in the heavy sort of IT world, giving them a path to that and an opportunity would be good. I think also in one thing that's missing, you touch on workforce housing here, but you all don't talk about affordable housing. And those are not exactly the same, but they can go concurrently. We have a sort of difficulty right now. Lately, we haven't seen a lot of sort of middle workforce housing being created in the county. And there's a spatial mismatch of lower or kind of like less high-tech skilled workers where they live and where they work. You've got an emphasis on transit-oriented development here, but it's completely missing any component of workforce housing there, or any kind of affordable housing there. So instead of talking about transit-oriented development and TOD within these slides, I would like you to augment that with E, a little e, TOD, meaning equitable transit-oriented development. You can get, this is sort of like a newer thing. Bids and transit-oriented developments, or TODs, were a thing of a decade ago. Equitable transit-oriented development is something that's kind of up and coming. Chicago has it in some of its areas where they're trying to bring together different local government actors. And Montgomery County, to some extent, is doing this. They had a posting, I think some of our planners actually over the Montgomery County side had a blog piece in, I think it was Brookings, maybe a week ago or something. And they took a focus on pedestrian-oriented development as part of their equitable. But I think we could also go for just income, racial, pretty much anything within there. But the ETOD, I think, should be something that would be good to highlight here, because as you're building this out, we don't want to leave behind the people that were here originally, or that could move into these areas and provide a little bit better match. When you talk about like Hispanic folks coming here and settling from other places and sort of being kind of out of place in some way, well, if we get them into the jobs and we get them located around transit-oriented development, or anybody for that matter, we'll have this sort of equitable part as we're trying to bootstrap up the county and bring it in play. In terms of ideas on actually this slide, for slide 14, I think you could probably work in a few of these things with the STEM, or sorry, slide 15. I was looking at the action plans. You can work in the STEM part in that on the right-hand side, the far right third column, first row, the STEM part right there. I think you could also put that as STEAM within there.
And it should be STEAM. I do apologize. And if you take a look at the detailed action, yep, you'll see a lot of the great suggestions you have we're picking up on. But again, it could maybe be strengthened. And so, perhaps you could take a look more specifically at that, or we could take your comments and take a look at it again. But it has a lot of the same flavor, and it's really asking, because these are now resources the K-12 system has on its own. It's how do we engage the corporate sector to be a real part of that. So that's very much it. The housing specific, we are not a housing study. So hopefully Plan 2035, or how it's being adapted, really that's the guide for the specifics around housing. It's not an area of focus in our economic, I mean, we can't be everything, or we'll be, so this is economic development. It's about how to grow the economy. We're picking up on the DOT and we're happy to make reference to it, but again, we did no housing analysis in this. That's beyond the purview of our work.
You have, if you look down in the green areas, the top left cell, you have development, the bids, and the TODs.
It's building all off of Plan 2035.
You can certainly incorporate the equitable aspects into that.
Absolutely.
This is a strategic action plan. You have things that you're going to be acting on. I think you can certainly incorporate the equitable part of the TOD and mention spatial mismatches or things like that as you're talking.
Absolutely.
I agree that this isn't a housing plan for you guys to solve all the challenges of housing, but to not acknowledge that when you're already acknowledging some of the other immigrants that are coming into this area is just, it's a mismatch in concept as well as space, because when you're creating an economic plan, housing is an extremely big part of it. If you don't have people living in the county or living close to where they work, then you're going to have challenges. You're going to have traffic, and those can be inequitable if you have lower income people who have to drive a long way because they can't afford to live next to the TODs. In the TOD stuff, if you want action plans on how do you do bids and what do you do for TOD things, You could think about land trusts or any ways of like subsidizing inclusionary zoning within those kinds of areas that are those TODs. You could encourage LIHTC or opportunity zones. You were talking about technical assistance and providing that to businesses. That could also be technical assistance for developers of how do you locate federal subsidized funding to actually enact some of these plans within there, and maybe having some of the elements of the bids encourage that kind of activity. So although I agree that this is not a housing plan, economics and housing are not disconnected, and you should definitely incorporate some of that when you're proposing this stuff within there. And I mean, you might even, I think the bottom, that the gray or the green area at the bottom, that first row, I like the acknowledgement of the zoning reform and that it's enacted, but it's not an action. It's already going to happen. So you might think about maybe putting a different bullet within there, because that should happen. It absolutely should happen. It's going to be law, and we've been working on that for a long time here at the commission. But it's almost like a filler place, so you could probably put something a little bit more towards the equitable aspects that could go hand in hand with the economic development plans that you're proposing. Because that should, without a question, that should happen. And it's not even something that should be on a checklist, because it already is going to go out and to unfold. So I think you have a space right there potentially that you could add in another strategic action to actually address some of the things that I mentioned.
Okay. Was that it for you, Commissioner Dorner?
Yeah, and I'll also mention, you can also even think about like capital grants. Like you guys have proposed a couple of subsidies, so you can think about capital grants to help create the affordable rental units in the TODs or the areas around there. That might add a little bit more cost to what was mentioned earlier, but it's also a way of actually putting some of this into play. And I'll stop there. Thank you. Good presentation. These just kind of nitpicky things as I'm going through and looking through stuff, just to kind of tie it together to some of the things that we're hearing a lot on a day-to-day basis as we get developers in here and we're hearing citizens of their concerns.
Thank you.
Okay. And if there's anything left, we're going to turn to Commissioner Giraldo.
Yeah, I just want to share in the comments of my fellow commissioners. I just have a couple of points. I do like the idea of the workforce development. I think that's critical. And I also like the idea of stressing the partnerships. We have Employ Prince George's, which is dealing with the workforce development, and then we do have those excellent STEAM programs promoted by Maryland National Capital Park and Planning to help the youth with the educational part as well as the arts part. What I did find missing is any suggestions for state law that would help promote entrepreneurships. And I'll give you an example. I remember the District of Columbia 15 years ago, and they changed the law to allow the craft breweries and to allow craft alcohol. And so now you have in the district, you have producers of vodka, producers of tequila, and these tend to be smaller businesses and entrepreneurs. And to what extent, and then the other thing that they have that we don't have in this state, which I find ridiculous, is the fact that the stores cannot sell beer and wine. So what effect does the state laws have on developing or creating or enhancing these entrepreneurs, and what changes in state laws can be made?
One of the things we do recommend is better access to some. This is a strategy about how the county can do it, and changing state law isn't really what we looked at. And I'll say amen, brother, on the breweries bill. I've worked with Kevin Addicks in the past, and Maryland has, as Comptroller Francho has talked about, some of the most hidebound laws that do impact the development of the craft breweries, wineries, and distilleries in the nation. One of the things we do talk about is the need to better access many of the state programs that exist. So for instance, the USM internship fund is run out of UMBC and has a relatively low take-up rate from College Park. So providing better access to those types of state resources, again, for the community colleges and your four-year colleges here. And then really, I mean, Kerwin wasn't really out when we were doing this, but the whole, I can't remember which of the board members kind of talked about the need to go into, below community college into this. But I know with Kerwin coming out that CTE education and tapping into the dramatic expansion in state support for CTE, career technical education, if I'm throwing out an acronym without defining it. So again, better accessing the state programs is probably better at this point. And the county does a good job at this. So we do identify areas like the internship fund where we can go into that. And for microbreweries, as a beer drinker, I support any change at the county or state level.
Well, and the reason I brought it up is because I've seen that where they put those breweries or where they put the whiskey, the in-house whiskey producers, there's economic development that spreads out from that because people visit it and then you see it spreading. And, I just see that, and I could see that in certain areas of the county where it would be productive.
And the county does, Calvert's quite good. And, but you do look at these clusters developing. So Howard County, I would say, has a cluster of microbrew-based development. They've got 6 or 7 of them. So again, not to pick on that specific industry, I think for the strategy, one of the things we do recommend is really kind of better access and better utilization of state programs that do exist. Changing state law, I'd love to, but not something we're empowered to do. But again, there's plenty of what I would call low-hanging fruit, like the internship fund, that can readily improve access, or the accessing the Kerwin Commission CTE programs that can immediately bear fruit without any kind of attempt to change state law.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again. It was an excellent presentation.
Thank you. So I had a few comments too. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Iannucci for joining us and for his presentation, for his very hard work on this for so long. Mr. Iannucci, David, thank you so very much. Mr. Horowitz and Dr. Clinch, thank you so very much for your efforts on this. You've heard some feedback, constructive feedback, and although we mentioned STEAM, I did hear you earlier, Mr. Horowitz, which you did emphasize STEAM earlier. It's just we have to.
Right. And we just didn't get it in fully.
Yep. Presentation, yeah. And I don't know how many of you were on earlier because we said we would not take this before 11. So I don't know if you were on at the very beginning, but in response to slide 6, if you can go back to slide 6, Mr. Flanagan. We were talking about the impacts of COVID, which were devastating for the county. And so I work with the county health department on a regular basis. We talk nearly daily. So yesterday we have some updated information from the CDC specific to Prince George's County. So in the United States, this is hot off the presses yesterday. So in the United States, there are 2,700 counties that have a high transmission rate, 2,700 counties. And 338 have a substantial transmission rate. And we were in the critical stage for so long, critical transmission rate right here in Prince George's County until a couple of weeks ago. And then we went too high. And so luckily, the good news is that we are now one of only 85 counties in the United States to be at the moderate transmission level. So this is really, really good news for us. And we have worked really, really hard to do that. And that will help tremendously. So everybody's got to do their part to stay safe. And I wanted to say kudos to the Prince George's County residents for doing their part. 72.3% have been, of the total population has been fully vaxxed. But 82% of adults in Prince George's County have been fully vaxxed. The 72.3 includes youth, kids. So 82% of the adults have been fully vaxxed. And I got to give a shout out to the commission employees because within the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, 98% of our folks have been vaxxed. 98% fully vaxxed. So I want to give a shout out to for that as well, because all of that helps us be safe and promote economic development, we can get back to taking care of business. We can go back to the workplace. We can do what needs to be done for the betterment of Prince George's County in her entirety. So so I'm thankful for that. I also wanted to say, some people touched on this. I think Madam Vice Chair touched on this. Commissioner Dorner touched on this. But we think working with our youth, and we have partnerships with the University of Maryland, partnerships with Bowie State, partnerships with the Prince George's Community College as well, and work with our youth throughout the county. So I'm very, very pleased about that, both in the planning department and the Department of Parks and Recreation. In the planning department, we have a collegiate internship program, and we have produced some people over the years who've gone on to excel, not only in planning careers, but in all types of careers, some of them who have come back to work for us full-time years later. So we're really, really pleased about that. And that's one way that we can help. And also with the Department of Parks and Recreation, particularly with our recreation program and summer camps, the Department of Parks and Recreation is the #1 public employer of youth in the county. So that's really good to help them get started. And when we reference the programs that are in this Parks and Recreation Guide, some of the many fabulous recreation programs, if you all have it, the board has it. So if you turn to pages 22 and 23 of this 55-page document full of courses, there's so many ways that we contribute to the development of our youth, because we have creative writing and resume building, robotics, and then we have so many programs for those who are homeschooled, so to have them get out and interact with other people, which is very, very important. We have an academic enrichment program. We have stock market investing. We have computer skills for children, for adults, and for seniors, and then we have beginners and advanced, and so on and so forth. We have PowerPoint classes, Excel classes, Word classes. So so many things along those lines to help with our youth. And I think that's very, very important to help prepare them, because they're going to be our leaders, and they're going to be the ones running the businesses as some of us step out into the sunset. So we really, really want to help our youth and do our part. And with regard to nonprofits, many of us on this board serve on nonprofits, and we can be helpful to you in recommending other nonprofits to participate. So I'm looking at several of our board members right now who are on other nonprofits and would be happy to share their information. And the other thing I wanted to point out in this guide is that we have, Mr. Horowitz, you talked about being inclusive, and that is so very important in Prince George's County. We want all of Prince George's County to excel, not just in terms of economic development, but educationally, everything, because a rising tide raises all ships. We know that. So we have programs for persons of all ability levels. And our therapeutic recreation programs, which I had said earlier are national award winning, bring everyone into the fold, people of all ability levels, because they are major contributors to our society. We leave nobody behind. Everyone has something to contribute. And so we have all sorts of classes involving for therapeutic recreation, and that's important because that lifts everyone. So I just wanted to take a moment to mention that as well. And because all of this contributes to the strategic plan to elevate Prince George's County and push her forward. And that's what we all want to see, because we all carry her very dear to our hearts. So I wanted to take this opportunity to point those things out and to point out the ways that we can be even more collaborative, involving both sides of our commission and the nonprofits and everything else that we bring to the table, because each member, as I said, each member of this planning board lives in Prince George's County and brings different expertise. No two people have the same expertise and same background, professional background. So we each bring something, and we're happy to share with you in any way that will help even fine tune the strategic plan even more. And I think Prince George's County is already a jewel, but we want to get that cloth out and polish her up even more, make her shine even more. And I think collectively and inclusively, we can do that. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for your presentation. And let me see if you have any other comments. No other comments? Okay, thank you all very, very much. Okay, a wonderful presentation. This is a keeper. You better believe this is not gonna be, you said this before, do not put this on the shelf and just walk away. This is not a shelf type item. This is a work in progress that we want to see these pages all, you know, curled up and everything because we're using this. So thank you so very much. Okay,
Thank
with
you.
that, thank you. I'm going to check, Ms. Jones. Okay, so we're gonna, how about we take a break, a nature break, and then we'll come back and hear item 5, okay? I know people are hungry, but we're gonna take a 10-minute nature break, so we'll come back at 12:40. Great, thank you. Let me make sure we have everyone we need for item 5. So the Prince George's County Planning Board is back in session. We have before us now item 5, which is certification of non-conforming use, 12648-2015. It is for 8204 Belafonte Lane Apartments. Mr. Stevers, there you are. Joseph Myers. No Myers? You look under Shannon, okay. All right, he's not on, but this is the time we said we would take it.
This is Joseph Myers.
Oh, you are on, okay. So you're a caller? You're a caller, or are you under, oh, is that Ann? Okay, sorry, got it. Okay, so we're going to start, we do have 2 additional exhibits. We have a letter from Mr. Myers and also with attached before and after pictures. So with that, I'm going to turn to Mr. Stevers. If we can mute anybody else, this is some background noise somewhere. Okay.
All right,
So
thank
Mr.
you.
Stevers, wonderful.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members, or good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. For the record, I am Thomas Sievers, Planner 2 with the zoning section. Item number 5 on the agenda is a certification of non-conforming use for 8204 Belafonte Lane Apartments, CNU-12648-2015. The subject application requests the certification of a non-conforming multifamily use. The applicant provided additional information by the 12 p.m. deadline this past Tuesday. The proposed revisions do not have any bearing on the findings and will need to be administratively amended. I will address this at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. The site is located in the south central part of Prince George's County within Planning Area 81A and Council District 9. Slide 3, please. More specifically, the site is located 1,800 feet northeast of the intersection of Old Alexandria Ferry Road and Belafonte Lane. Slide 4, please. The site is surrounded by single-family detached residential development to the west and north, and 2 multifamily apartment buildings to the east, all in the RR Rural Residential Zone. Belafonte Lane abuts the subject site to the south, with more residential uses in the RR zone beyond. Slide 5, please. The overlay map shows the site is within a military installation overlay for height, noise, and safety. Slide 6, please. The aerial photograph shows the subject site outlined in red and gives you a backdrop for the lay of the land. Slide 7, please. The site map shows that the topography of the property is mostly level with some slope at the rear of the property. Slide 8, please. The master plan right-of-way map shows the master plan collector roadway Old Alexandria Ferry Road is located to the west with an industrial connection to Belafonte Lane, which shows a future connection, excuse me, to Louis Pepper Drive. The existing section of Louis Pepper Drive connects to Woodyard Road, a master plan arterial roadway. Slide 9, please. The bird's eye view shows another angle of the subject site. Slide 10, please. The site plan shows the multifamily building and associated parking area. The evaluation of the site is based on the lack of zoning regulations in place at the time of development in 1960. Since a valid UNO permit has not been obtained and the continuity of the use of the 6-unit multifamily dwelling has not been fully demonstrated, the applicant has requested a hearing before the planning board by filing this application. It should be mentioned at this point that prior to this hearing, the case was continued indefinitely by the planning board on February 15th, 2018. The applicant has since filed for a UNO permit as of November 4th, 2019, and affirmed by affidavit that the building has been fully leased up to the present day. Slide 11, please. Pursuant to section 27-244B2B of the zoning ordinance, evidence must be provided that the non-conforming use did not cease to operate for more than 180 consecutive calendar days for the purpose of correcting code violations or due to seasonal use. Staff found the multifamily use was vacant for 10 months while under previous ownership. Then there was a second break-in use for approximately 17 months while the current owner worked through the renovation process. The applicant did not provide justification for not acquiring or applying for the required rental license and UNO permit during the first 2 years of his possession. Therefore, sufficient evidence was not provided to reach a recommendation of approval. Slide 12, please. This slide shows the front elevation of the multifamily building. Slide 13, please. This slide shows the rear elevation of the building. Slide 14, please. This slide shows the front parking lot with 6 unmarked gravel parking spaces. Slide 15, please. This slide shows an existing driveway. The 8-foot wide asphalt driveway passes along the west side of the building. Slide 16, please. This slide shows the rear of the property with an existing concrete slab and a concrete walkway that leads to the rear entrance. Slide 17, please. This slide shows the plan that was approved in 2014 for renovation permits. Please notice the internal sidewalk and the extent of the parking area in the front of the building. Slide 18, please. This slide shows the original parking area in more detail. Slide 19, please. Aerial photos suggest that the parking lot was expanded in front of the building along Belafonte Lane as recently as 2016. Staff notes that the expanded parking area on the subject site requires approval of a special exception pursuant to section 27-242 of the zoning ordinance if the use is certified as non-conforming. Slide 20, please. This slide shows the expanded front area in more detail. Slide 21, please. In conclusion, the zoning staff recommends that the planning board adopt the findings and disapprove the certification of non-conforming use for 8204 Belafonte Lane Apartments, CNU-12648-2015, because the non-conforming use ceased to operate for more than 180 consecutive calendar days. Consequently, the planning board must determine whether the use should be certified as non-conforming pursuant to section 27-244F. As previously mentioned, the applicant provided 2 pieces of additional information for the record. This includes proposed revisions, which are administrative in nature, and additional evidentiary photos. Staff is in support of the proposed revisions. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Okay. Mr. Sievers, thank you very much. Okay. So tell me, the staff is in support of the proposed revisions. Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then when your slide 11, was your slide 11 27-244 or 241? 244B2B, okay, 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 thank you. Okay, let's see if the board has any questions of you at this time. Madam Vice Chair?
No question. Time.
Thank Commissioner Washington?
Just a clarifying question, Mr. Seaver. So you're in support of the revisions, but it does not, this is a question, does it change your recommendation?
No, ma'am, it does not.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Commissioner Dorner?
And just to be clear, one of the revisions was changing, I think, from like a 17-month gap to 15. You're fine with that as well?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's it.
And Commissioner Geraldo?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Myers?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Mr. Myers, you're pretty muffled. You're calling in, or are you on a device?
On a device. Can you hear me better now?
No. I mean, no. The board, a couple of the board members are shaking their heads. So do you have the phone number so you can phone in?
No, I don't have it here. I have my phone here. Could give me that, I could call it.
Yeah, you can call in. Okay. We're going to Mr. Cron or Ms. Jones. Can someone send him the phone number to call in? Or Ms. Black? And someone please let me know that you're actually taking care of it.
Madam Chair, this is James. We'll take care of that.
Okay, you'll take care of it. Okay, wonderful. Okay. Thank you. So let's just give it a minute or two. Okay. So let's we're gonna keep everybody on mute for about a minute or two, okay?
Yes, hello, this is Joseph Myers.
Okay. Okay, we can hear you. Can everyone hear better? Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, Mr. Myers, you get to you have a burden here, so you get to tell your story.
Yes. Yes. Well, first, good morning or afternoon. I do appreciate the opportunity to allow me to speak in this forum. First, I'm a 35-year resident of the county, and I am now of both of the issues that are included in the staff report. the main issue, of course, is the break in use due to the time the property was on the market back in 2012. And the second was the break in use that was greater than the 1 year that we spent during the renovation. If you may allow me to go into the first item. First, the previous owner had the unit for sale, or was as a result of the foreclosure sale, and it was on the market for greater than the 180 days as stipulated in that section of the zoning code. That did occur, of course, before my involvement in our purchase of the property. So we are requesting, of course, an exemption to that particular zoning ordinance, because that was not in the realm of our control. And of course, that occurred before we purchased the building in late 2012. The second item dealt with the time that it took to do the actual renovation. There is a section there, and it was indicated in the staff report, stated in section 27-243, A.1.b of the zoning ordinance. There are provisions made for the reconstruction, restoration, and reestablishment. They have a time limit there of 1 year. At the time that we purchased the building and the construction work, which was major work, we were not aware of that 1 year time period. In fact, we were not aware of the CNU process at that time. I think you may have a picture there that showed the work that was done. We did major renovation. This included new plumbing, new electrical. It was a heavy up. We removed all of the baseboard heaters and installed ducts for new central HVAC high efficiency heat pumps. Of course, we obviously had to put in the new windows and a new roof.
And I'm trying to get to your the picture that would depict that. Is that basically the one that you submitted?
Yes.
Okay, so that
was just
exhibit number. Well, there's 2 pages to 2, so maybe it's the second page where that shows the kitchen and living room and bath.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's it. Yes, there you have the before and the after picture. And one of the issues that came up was when we were discussing with DPI, when we first purchased the building. Yes.
I was going to say that's some of it. You had mentioned also, I was looking at your exhibit too, because you talked about the plumbing and the bathrooms and this and that. So that would be, you can look at this one first, and then we can go to your exhibit number 2. But okay, let's talk about this one. Okay.
But as you can see from the building, the before picture, it was in a really bad condition. There was a fire in the 2010-2011 timeframe. The previous owners, based on decided at that time
I think we lost you. We lost you.
Okay.
Well, now we hear you. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Basically, I was stating that the previous owners at the time basically abandoned the building after the fire, and there was a foreclosure sale that was listed to get the listing in early 2012, the February 2012 timeframe. And that was the basically condition of the building when I purchased it. During the sale period, the building was 6 months. The real estate market was very different back then than it is now. So you had properties that were, on the market for a much longer period of time. And I forgot to mention, I'm also a licensed real estate agent in Maryland. And we purchased the building in the late 2012 timeframe.
Okay.
December.
Let me stop you for a second. Let me stop you, Mr. Myers, because for some reason you're fading in and out a little bit. So is there, we'll keep.
Okay.
Is that, do you have a landline? Do you have a landline? Or is that a land? That's a cell.
Let me, I do apologize. Let me redial this using my landline.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Address, mainly the parking lot issue in the rear, and all of the inspections, as I said, have been approved, and we did have rental licenses for the last 4 years. The very last section of the very last cycle of the rental license is what we're trying to obtain now, and we actually would like to get a permanent UNO so that we can get this back to more of a normal process.
Mr. Myers, and let me, I'm sure we all have questions. Excuse me. So it sounds, you purchased this property, I guess, in December of, is that what it was, December of 2012?
Yes, that's correct.
And it was continuous use from 1960 to 2012 when the property was vacated. So it was vacated in January of 2012, and it was no tenant from 2012, January of 2012 through May of 2014. Okay, so you purchased it in 2012, and then you were working with DPI for permits from a couple of months later, from March through November of 2013. Now, I know that you said you were unaware of some of the constraints regarding a non-conforming use, and that happens. We could tell you, there's, you're supposed to know these things. We're supposed to look into these things, and we know it's hard, particularly when this may or may not be your bailiwick in terms of the law for these types of things. You do have to do due diligence. We do have an information counter here just for future reference because you're in real estate, you said. So we have an information counter here, and you can call for questions regarding property because they would tell you that. So now we're at this point where you have this property where you have rented out 6 apartments, and you're asking us you have issues. You may or may not meet. Our staff has indicated you don't meet the criteria of Section 27-244 and 27-241. So let's go with 27-241 first. So it's supposed to be continuous day-to-day operation of a certified non-conforming use is required to maintain its non-conforming status. Discontinuance of a day-to-day operation for a period of 180 days, meaning 6 months or more consecutive calendar days, shall constitute abandonment of the use. Then it goes on to say, but no certified non-conforming use may be reestablished unless either, that's a certified non-conforming use, unless either the case involves reconstruction, restoration, or reestablishment in accordance with 27-243, which I referenced. So now, so one of the things you're saying is that, I've taken that you're saying is that you were in the process of the restoration here. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct. During that entire period, we were working on the building and restoring the building and also doing many of the upgrades. So the building is now at a much higher standard than it was when I obviously first purchased it.
And that's also set for that same language is set forth in 27-243A1B. So then we go to 27-244. So a non-conforming use may only continue if a use and occupancy permit identifying the use as non-conforming is issued after a planning board or district council certifies that the use is non-conforming, is not illegal, and any person making use or relying on the certification that is violating or has violated any conditions thereof, or that use of for which the certification was granted is being or has been exercised contrary to the terms or conditions of such approval shall be grounds for revocation proceedings in accordance with this code. So Mr. Severs has responded that no U&O permit is available to determine that it was legally constructed. There were tax records that reflect the construction of the dwelling in 1960, which predated the zoning. And two similar multifamily buildings exist east of the subject site. So I guess what I'm trying to, there's somewhere in here, in that provision, I guess I'm going to turn to Mr. Goldsmith. Okay, Mr. Goldsmith, regarding his, I thought there was a provision that says something unless it's beyond your control. So can you give us the full citation that Mr. Myers is trying to comply with, Mr. Goldsmith?
Yes, I think if you scroll down, Madam Chair, but it's 27 to, if you scroll down to page 9 in the staff report.
Yeah, that's where I am. Okay.
And it's that second big B that says evidence that the non-conforming use has not ceased to operate for more than 180 consecutive calendar days between the time the use became non-conforming and the date when the application is submitted, or that conditions of non-operation for more than 180 consecutive calendar days were beyond the applicant's and or owner's control before the purpose of correcting code violations or were due to the seasonal nature of the use.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Okay. So Mr. Severs goes on to provide his response to that criteria. So, and then at the bottom of page 9, Mr. Severs finds that upon reviewing the documents, some documentation submitted for the U&O permit application, staff finds that the non-conforming use ceased to operate for more than 180 calendar days, consecutive calendar days. So now we need to know whether the second part of that criteria in B, paragraph B that you mentioned, unless the time beyond the 180 calendar days were beyond the applicant's or owner's control, or for the purpose of correcting code violations or due to the seasonal nature. So I guess we're giving Mr. Myers a chance to make his case. I feel like, what happens if this non-conforming use is not granted? He has a structure there that just cannot be used for apartments. Is that what would be the status of this building? Not to you. That's not addressed to you, Mr. Myers. That's addressed to our own counsel or Mr. Severs.
That's correct, Madam Chair. He would have a building that cannot be used as a multifamily building because it's not allowed in the zone.
Okay. But he would still have full use of the building, but you couldn't have apartments in there. But but they are there now. It would just have to be under, they just couldn't be rented out. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Goldsmith?
That's right.
Okay.
Could be used as a multifamily building, right?
So, Madam Chair,
Yeah, Commissioner Giraldo.
I'm looking at it and I see that there's other apartment buildings on that block. Matter of fact, right next door, there's two other ones. They're only a 2-story. This seems to be a 3-story. But I'm wondering whether or not combination of the housing crash and COVID may have affected his ability to complete it within that 1 year. Would that make a difference?
I don't
Mr.
know,
Goldsmith?
because I think some of this happened prior to 2018 when it first came before the board. If that, Mr. Sievers
Oh,
can.
okay.
And so it would be important for the board to also focus on the prior period when the prior owner,
Vacated.
correct,
Okay.
and determine whether during that time there were conditions that were beyond that owner's control as well.
So, Mr. Goldsmith, are you saying that if it extended beyond that time period with the prior owner, and this owner would basically be stuck with that?
What I'm saying is that if the board were able to find that the conditions of non-operation, both under the prior owner and under this owner, were beyond both of their control, then
I think by law we have to deal with the prior owner as well, and so that vacant from January of 2012 to May of 2014.
So I think that's what Commissioner Giraldo was. I don't know if COVID really had much of an impact then because we didn't have COVID, but we did have the housing crash that Commissioner Giraldo referenced, and our county was one of the worst in the country for foreclosure rates. Like, you just couldn't get rid of the inventory here. So I think the applicant addressed that in a different way by talking about how it was very difficult to sell homes and how to clear them at that time. So having spent 10 months to clear like a home that is in foreclosure, I think is extremely short compared to other states that would be 3 to almost 5 years to get rid of some of that stock. So I think that was certainly beyond his control with the prior owner. And it sounds like he was making improvements along the way, even though it took him slightly longer than what we might want with the 15 months. I think that was probably also beyond his control just because of the conditions of the housing environment and the general economy at that time. It doesn't sound like he was nefariously trying to get around the rules and intentionally try and extend out the process while he was doing this stuff. It seems like he was making attempts the entire time to improve this unit and improve it drastically. And there are units literally right next door on one side that are almost identical to use. So it's not like this would be a non-conforming use that would be like a blighted eyesore or whatever. He took it from a blight condition and made it livable, and has had people in there the whole time. So my comments give you all any indication. I think this is an exception that is reasonable. And Mr. Goldsmith read in, I think, the conditions that would be enough for us to find that it's beyond the applicant's really went there.
Let me jump in there for a second, because I feel for this applicant who purchased a property. You do have to do, in the future, we have to do due diligence, but that could happen to anybody. You know, sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. I am not as concerned about what this applicant was doing, because this applicant seems to have been working it, and it said that, and the contractors who were helping, they went beyond their time frame, which happens all the time. But I'm looking at that 2.5 year or 2 year and 4 months from the previous owner, and we don't know what was going on there, except maybe what Commissioner Dorner said. So that was vacant from January 2012 to May of 2014. You know, I don't know, but let me just say this. The fact that there are other houses in the neighborhood isn't particular, similar apartment buildings in the neighborhood isn't particularly relevant, except it's not relevant to our findings, but it is indicative of the fact that nobody else signed up in opposition to this. And if it had been an eyesore type of thing, we would have had citizens signed up left and right to protest this. So it's not an offensive use. You did make drastic improvements there. If we could go to his exhibit 2 that showed the pictures of the interior with the restroom and the kitchen. So you've done that, yeah. So I guess I need help with the prior owner. Wherever we go, we just have to make the appropriate findings. It's not just sympathy or empathy. We have to make the appropriate findings. And Mr. Goldsmith, if you could reiterate for us what the required findings are that we would have to make, and then we'll see where we are. Yeah.
Just to clarify, that 2-year period, back in 2012, from during that period, that was actually when he was when the current owner, the applicant, was actually purchased. It's not that he was doing these renovations last year or a couple of years ago. He was doing them back in 2013 to 2014. What I understand.
2012. Yeah, he started in December. He purchased it in December of 2012. The previous, it was vacant from January of 2012. So we have 11 months there. Okay.
Yeah, we were going through the housing crash.
Okay. So I see where you're going. I just need to make sure that wherever we go, we have to comport with the relevant provisions in section 27 and in subtitle 27. So Mr. Goldsmith.
And Madam Chair, Peter Goldsmith, Senior Counsel, for the record. There was a slide up there that had the standard.
11. It was slide 11.
Yeah, if Mr. Flanagan doesn't mind, could you please put slide 11 back up there?
Okay.
And so, what that says in essence, and it's also captured in 27.241, but I think 27.241 actually applies to a certified non-conforming use that is already non-conforming use that has already been certified. But in essence, the board in order to approve it, the board would either have to find that the non-conforming use has not ceased to operate for more than 180 consecutive calendar days. And so they would have to focus on that 2-year period to determine whether that was actual operation or not, or that conditions of non-operation for more than 100 calendar days were beyond the applicant's and or owner's control, so both of them, or were for the purpose.
No, it's not both of them, and or. It's and or.
Right.
Right.
Well, there's the period, right? Okay. Well.
You mean both owners? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that there's 2 breaks.
Okay.
And so I think the board would have to consider both.
So, Madam Chair, I'm ready to make a motion. I think I have enough I think I've heard enough from Mr. Goldsmith and from the applicant to feel that we could probably approve this application based on that second clause that's within there. Because I think there are plenty of conditions that were beyond control with the fire and the economic conditions early on for the original owner. And then the current applicant, I think we also had conditions that were beyond operational, or that there were conditions that were beyond the applicant's control at that time, who was dealing with contractors and trying to make renovations to fix the problems that had incurred and that he had purchased the property under, so that it would be up to code and actually be inhabitable to get the UNO approved. So I'm ready to make a motion if so pleases the board.
Okay. I'm fine with that. I do want to make sure, because we kind of cut Mr. Goldsmith off, I want to make sure that he doesn't, I think I saw where he was going, and I don't know, it seems like he was saying that it says beyond the applicant's or owner's control for the purpose of, I can't see it or the purpose of correcting code violations, or those are 3 things. I think you were getting ready to say that those first 2 need to be combined. I don't know. But I would think of them as any one of those 3 things. But I just want to make sure Mr. Goldsmith didn't feel compelled to add anything else at point? Because we did cut you off.
No, I think that it's in the disjunctive.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Dorner?
So I'll go ahead and I'll move that we approve the application for CNU -12648 -2015 for 8204 Bellefonte Lane Apartments. Noting what I had mentioned before and specifically citing the condition, I don't think there's any challenge necessarily to whether or not this is a sort of the livable conditions and have had a series of tenants within here when the applicant has been here, and that's called out in the applicant or in the staff report for this. But specifically, if we go to what's on the slide, section 27-244 small b2 capital B, I think that we hit several of the conditions that are appropriate for this case, where there are conditions of a non-operation of more than 180 consecutive days. That's true. I think we've established that. However, it was beyond the applicant's and the prior owner's control. The prior owner was dealing with a financial crisis that we hit with the housing market crash, and you can't clear property that well that fast. What we also learned is that that prior owner had some sort of a fire damage within the unit, and that wasn't going to be up to code. So when the current applicant bought it, there were some things that were beyond that applicant's control of having to fix these things. It took a while to get the contractors in place to make all the appropriate improvements and everything, which were beyond his control in terms of the contractors. And then he was also doing this for the second part of the last bit of that section to try and bring everything up for livable conditions to correct any what would have been code violations had he tried to apply for the UNO at that time. I believe he's made attempts to improve this property, and he's done that in good faith, not necessarily stopping work. It seems like it was continuous throughout the entire time period. So although the length is beyond what we would want to see statutorily or by code, I think there's reasonable exceptions in here given the conditions that were happening in a broader economic sense, particularly in our county. And then also just conditions within that specific unit of damages that he was trying to rectify so he could rent this out as a unit that he's trying to get the UNO for at the time. So I think we should approve this application and then update the staff report to reflect those extenuating circumstances that the applicant had to go through.
And I second that very thorough motion, Madam Chair.
We have a motion from Commissioner Dorner and seconded by Commissioner Washington, and noting that Mr. Sievers and Mr. Goldsmith, the findings that depending on how the vote goes, that the findings as referenced by Commissioner Dorner would be captured in the new resolution, not new resolution, but the resolution, depending on the vote. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Madam Vice Chair?
Commissioner Dorner, that's the longest motion I've been on the commission, but I vote aye.
Okay, Commissioner Washington?
I do vote aye. Well done, Mr. Dorner.
Absolutely.
Okay, Commissioner Dorner, clearly.
Be making the motions because brevity was not there, but hopefully there's a little background to guide it. So I vote aye.
Yeah, well, it was necessary for findings. Okay, and Commissioner Giraldo?
I vote aye, Madam Chair.
The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you very much. So congratulations, Mr. Myers. You still have work to do, but you got past this part.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm going to, I'm going to turn to Mr. Hunt. No, first, before I turn to Mr. Hunt, I wanted to say, I wanted to give a shout out to a young man of immense talent, and that man would be Enrique Dorner. In the beginning of this program, I mentioned about Rebecca Lee Crumpler, who was the first African-American woman medical doctor in the United States. And it just so happens that the incomparable Enrique Dorner chose to highlight her for his Black History Month program, and he presented. Is that correct, Mr. Dorner, Commissioner Dorner?
Yes, it's correct. He might be presenting today. He didn't get an opportunity to present yesterday, so he was a little bit upset. He selected her because he wanted to find a hero that they had to select that had advanced certain aspects that he would appreciate. And he chose a doctor, the first female African-American doctor in the United States. She was a nurse for a number of years, and went on and went to medical school when it was a time that you don't see females in general, and you definitely didn't see people of color in medical schools. And she went through a lot of difficulties in her life to try and practice her field. And she dedicated her profession or her vocation to helping people who are lower income, and mothers and kids. So he was very appreciative of learning about all of that. And hopefully today is sharing that information. I tried to help him in French, but I don't really speak enough French to help him translate all that stuff. So maybe his teacher is able to translate that into French as he's sort of explaining why he thinks she's a gem in history.
Great.
So I hope you share this part with Enrique, that we are giving his props to him for picking such a wonderful hero, Shiro. And she was a wonderful author too, and that was in 1864 when she became the first African-American woman doctor. Okay, medical doctor. And with that, I am going to thank everyone for their participation today. Again, I'm going to ask everyone to just please step up your, intensify your level of kindness and reaching out to one another. I'm telling you, these are tough times. We've had enough. We're frustrated. And mental illness and emotional issues are very, very challenging, but they are very, very real. And your one act of kindness may make a tremendous difference in someone's life. And so that's one little thing that we can do to offset all the craziness that's going on in this world. And so I know it's what we do, and let's just step it up a little bit more. And with that, I'm going to turn to Mr. Hunt and ask the critical question of the day. Oh, and apparently there's been another bombing, another missile fired, so there are more deaths in the Ukraine. This is just awful. So we want to continue to keep folks in our prayers. And Mr. Hunt, is there any additional business to come before the Prince George's County Planning Board today?
Madam Chair, that's all the business items before the board today.
Okay, so thank you so very much, Mr. Hunt. Happy 40th, Mr. Goldsmith. Happy birthdays, Deputy Planning Director King, and happy birthday to our leap year Commissioner Washington. Happy birthday to you. And Planning Board is adjourned.